The time is now 5:30 on Wednesday, February 15th, 2023, and this public meeting of the DC State Board of Education will come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Bernstadt, Representative Burgess, Representative Wages, Representative Washington,
Present.
Representative Williams, Representative Chang,
Present.
Representative Goulet, Representative O'Leary,
Here.
Representative Henderson,
Present.
Representative Best,
Present.
Representative Thompson,
Present.
Representative Reed,
Present.
Representative Patterson. President Thompson, you have a quorum.
Perfect. A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? Okay. Seeing no changes, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Being properly moved and seconded, I will ask for all the yeas and the nays. All in favor, say yay. Aye, sorry.
Aye.
It's that time of
Aye.
day. This is why we got gavel in on time. I get sleepy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Perfect. The motion is approved. We now have the minutes of our February 1st working session. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I believe I heard a second and a third, so it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there a discussion? All right. Seeing no discussion, the motion is on the adoption of the February 1st working session minutes. I will ask again for the yeas and the nays. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion is approved. All right. Good evening. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson. I represent Ward 7 on the State Board of Education. I also have the pleasure of serving as the president of the board this year. On behalf of the DC State Board of Education and its members, I want to welcome our guests and viewing public to our public meeting. The State Board plans to continue to hold this in-person posture for public meetings. The board will hold its regularly scheduled public meetings on the third Wednesday of every month at the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. This meeting is being broadcast live via the District Knowledge Network. Before I get to a discussion of the items on this evening's agenda, I wanted to take some time to share a few updates and highlights from the past month. Since we last met, the State Board has worked with the Office of the State Superintendent of Education to understand the draft social studies standards more deeply and discuss opportunities for further engagement and feedback. The Student Advisory Committee gave the OSSE Health Team feedback on the draft menstrual health standards. Lastly, the State Board leadership met with the Chairman Mendelson, to provide updates on the caseloads for the Office of the Student Advocate and the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education. This evening, the board will hear from 17 public witnesses. We look forward to hearing from you all as you share your testimony on the draft social studies standards, school trauma, flexible scheduling, transparency, and communications between schools and families, school-based mental health, out-of-school time programs, and other important educational topics. Following testimony from our public witnesses, the State Board will consider ceremonial resolutions honoring the retirement of Dr. Willie Jackson from Ballou High School and supporting the creation of a DC queer prom. The State Board will also vote on one state resolution appointing board members to an ad hoc bylaws committee and the Standing Administrative Committee. The next official meeting of the State Board will be our working session on March 1st, 2023. I would now like to turn to our State Superintendent, Dr. Grant, at this time for any comments she has this evening.
Thank you, President Thompson. Can you all hear me? Thanks. Thank you, President Thompson. I'm pleased to join you all this evening, and good evening to members of the board. I hope to keep my remarks short this evening, but I will provide you all with a brief update on our social studies standard revision work and provide you with an update on student transportation services. And I'd be remiss not to say hello to all of the PAVE parents in the audience. Spent a lot of time with you all over the last couple of days, and so it's good to see you all this evening. I will begin my update with an update on our menstrual health standards as an addendum. As outlined in the Expanding Student Access to Period Products Act, the district is to establish standards pertaining to menstrual health, regardless of gender, by March of 2023. OSSI's Health and Wellness team was pleased to present our draft standards to the State Board Student Advisory Committee last Monday. We value student voice, particularly in this case where we are building first-of-their-kind standards that aim to directly impact student perspectives on menstruation. So we were thrilled with the positive feedback we received on the proposed standards language. As you can recall, we initially anticipated a February vote, but after the board requested additional time to speak with constituents, we extended the public comment and moved our planned timeline for a vote in March. Public comment closes on Monday, February 20th. We have already received multiple thoughtful comments, and we hope to receive feedback from the board during this window so that we can respond accordingly. Once the board has approved the menstrual health standards, OSSI will engage LEAs in the difficult work of implementation. While it is OSSI's role to write the standards and LEAs' responsibilities to implement them, we do recognize that LEAs need support to come up to speed with new or even existing requirements. OSSI will provide robust technical assistance to help LEAs implement these new standards, as well as the other requirements in the legislation. Done correctly, this work will reduce menstruation-related stigmatization and help school climate improve. So we are excited to have these standards approved so that we can move to the next step in the process, which is the vital work of implementation. We will return to your March working session to update you on the public comment process, respond to board feedback, make any additional final edits, and we will return to your March meeting to ask that you approve the addendum on our health education standards and assist in us leading the nation once again in a topic that is near and dear to my heart and to the hearts of our students. Now I do want to take a brief moment and continue to give you all updates on our process on revising the district's social studies standards. OSSI released their draft revised standards for public comment on December 16th of 2022. We initially created a 45-day public comment period, which was 15 days longer than usual. However, when we last met, you requested an additional extension. We understand that the draft standards are lengthy, and so we readily complied with this request, extending the public comment window until February 10th of 2023, providing nearly twice the length of a standard public comment period, and we were happy to do so. We received robust public engagement with over 150 respondents providing more than 5,000 total public comments. Our team is currently in the process of reviewing these comments and working with the local educators that comprise of our technical writing committee, as well as our expert reviewers, to revise the standards based on this feedback. We deeply appreciate the time and effort the committee and expert reviewers have already spent crafting, editing, revising these draft standards, and I do want to continuously publicly thank everyone for their additional work in responding to public comment. It's a Herculean task, and folks are eager and excited to engage in the work. As I mentioned the last time we met, the edits that have yet to be made are still occurring, but we should continue to be proud of our new standards. Based upon the state board's guidelines, we will go forward and right-size the role of historically marginalized groups. We will increase rigor and depth by creating fewer, clearer, and higher standards. We have less emphasis placed on names and memorization of dates and places, and greater emphasis is placed on analytical and historical reasoning. We want our students to be able to connect historical changes and influences to their lived experiences. The standards also incorporate new learning priorities, particularly around digital literacy, action civics, where students can again apply their learning and create positive change in their community. OSSE also held an engagement session for all of our DC LEAs on January 25th, as it is vital to hear feedback from the institutions that will be responsible for implementing the standards. This was a truly productive convening. We received largely we received largely positive feedback on our standards, and the LEAs expressed an openness and a desire to fully and further collaborate on implementation. Throughout this process, in collaboration with our LEAs, we will identify supports that will best aid implementation. And we, as the state education agency, have earmarked $500,000 in recovery funds toward these efforts. We will get this revision and implementation process done right. In March, we will present a report to the board that coalesces the specific and general feedback and explain our corresponding edits and any areas of disagreement. We look forward to the board's approval of our standards this spring, and then we'll focus with staff exclusively on implementation thereafter. The last time we spoke, and as I continue to speak every single day, I'm describing the challenges that we are facing with respect to student transportation services, and I'd like to continue to provide you all an update with the progress that we've made since we've last met. The biggest driver of transportation service disruption has been and continues to be staff shortages. The gap between how many staff we need to provide families the reliable, timely service they deserve and the number of bus drivers and attendants we currently have on staff continues to persist. But to help reduce this gap, we are holding a Department of Transportation hiring fair tomorrow and Friday right in this very building. And we currently have over 250 interviews already scheduled with qualified candidates. We have over 2,200 individuals registered for the fair. So tomorrow and Friday are going to be a busy day. Every bus driver and attendant hired will receive a $5,000 hiring bonus. OSSE DOT remains committed to helping our students with disabilities get transported to school. This is an opportunity for any individual who joins our organization in DC government to earn a steady livelihood, and they would know that they were making a positive contribution to our city. In addition to aligning significant resources toward boosting our OSSE DOT employment, our staff is working urgently to improve operational efficiencies and communications with our families. Through our concerted efforts, we have been able to make operational changes that have allowed us to run every single route over the past 3.5 weeks, despite consistently high call-out rates. However, we still need to make larger changes to ensure consistent on-time performance, and we are working toward those changes, including increasing the number of contracts that we have with qualified private vendors to cover routes that do not need buses, and more than doubling our parent reimbursement rate for families that are capable of self-transportation. I'm pleased that we are making progress, but we still need to make further improvements, and I'll continue to come every single month and engage with you all, both at this meeting and with leadership and with members as they reach out, as we continue to make progress to meet the needs of our students with transportation services. And do just want to publicly thank members of the board directly who have reached out, who have sought counsel, who have connected constituents directly to us, have presented their thoughts on solutions. A lot of things are in place right now, and we were all waiting to see the impact on what we call Super Bowl Monday. And we were so pleased that we did have high call out, but we did not have a dramatic impact on service. And so we see progress, but I can't stress that we have a lot of work ahead of us. And so thank you all, both to the listening public and members on this dais, for engaging in this work with us together. I do wish the State Board luck at their performance oversight hearing. OSSI will also be joining you that day before council on March 3rd, and public testimony will be held on March 1st. I look forward to sharing the great news of OSSI, look forward to hearing from all of you, but do hope that the public comes out on March 1st to share their thoughts. Performance is an opportunity for us to engage and improve and get better, and so I look forward to engaging in that work with all of you. I did promise that my remarks would be brief, but I read a little slower today. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to our continued work, particularly on the standards revision. Together, we are going to make history, I think, and so I hope we get to do that work. Our standards have not been revised in 20 years. And so if we can get across that milestone, it will be significant for our current student Washingtonians who will become future leaders of this great city. Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Grant for joining us tonight and every third Wednesday, as she always does. I'm happy to share luck at the performance hearing, so we'll be wishing each other luck. We always appreciate your continued partnership on many policy issues, so thank you. All right. In September 2022, the State Board was awarded $10,000 from the National Association of State Boards of Education, also known as NASB, to act towards developing healthy school facilities to sustain safe learning environments. The State Board established a DC-based team with various experts across the district to help address school facility concerns. This work will review current state-level public school facility standards to ensure that facilities meet the physical and mental health needs of school staff, administrators, educators, and students. Our expert panel this evening consists of 3 invited witnesses who will share their thoughts on creating healthy, safe, and educationally appropriate school facilities and how this work aligns with the Master Facilities Plan and boundary study work scheduled to begin this spring. We are excited to hear from, and I encourage you to approach the table now, Jennifer Comey from the Deputy Mayor's Office, who is the Director of Planning and Analysis. I don't see Jen. Mary Falardo, Executive Director of 21st Century School Fund. Rodney McDaniel, Custodial Foreman at Powell Elementary School. In addition to our panel, we do also have a expert student witness who was not able to join us, so our student representative will read that testimony because that person would have been part of the panel. Each of the expert witnesses will have 5 minutes, and then we will move to 1 round of questions from the State Board. We're going to begin with Dr. Falardo. Whenever you're ready.
I was hoping the gentleman could go first,
Were you hoping?
but that's okay. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to make some comments. And not sure whether or not folks behind me had got a copy of this or not. But what I wanted to do was to say a little bit about sort of the importance of having a destination for a plan. Will introduce myself a little bit more. I'm Mary Falardo, and my children now, oh my gosh, 43, 41, and 39 all went through DC Public Schools, but I have 3 grandchildren now in the DC Public Schools also. And so I've got my heart in the schools, but I have also worked on educational facility infrastructure issues in the District of Columbia since my kids went to all the old ones, and my grandchildren get to go to some of the modern ones. But I also work with state policy across the United States, as well as involved in federal policy to try to get an appropriate federal role. But I have the opportunity to sort of compare what's happening in the District of Columbia and what's happening particularly in other urban districts. And we have a lot to be proud of here, and we still have a lot of work to do. And I think that the point that I think is most important for us to understand is that if we don't have a vision for where we want to go, and we just respond to what's in the history, that we're missing opportunities. And so what I have laid out in this one sort of sheet is part of what a master plan process does is it describes existing conditions. But so what do we care about on the conditions? You know, we care about sort of who's in the schools, the condition of the schools, the kind of access that families have to schools, the quality of the programming, the equity. We care about the diversity, kind of where do we have even integration in Washington, D.C.? So these are things that matter, and we need to have a description of those existing conditions. And the Deputy Mayor's Office has been really fabulous at giving us information through Edscape. But data alone doesn't get you a vision, doesn't get you a direction. And so what I would encourage the state board to do, and I know that with the committee that we've been working on, we've been looking at standards for healthy environments and standards that cross sectors. But it's more than just a standard of a building that's involved in master planning process. It's the organization of schools. And so I put here, these desired conditions are kind of my desired conditions. And what I think has to happen is we need consensus on it. Yep. We need consensus on what are the desired conditions. And we don't have it. I'll point out just to, because it's kind of an elephant in the room often, I think that roughly 70% of the kids should be in their DCPS schools and that the charter sector should be at about 30%. That's not where it is now. And there's not agreement on that. There's not agreement on that within the communities that I work with C4DC. There's not going to be agreement with that across sector. But we ought to have a conversation about that as part of our vision, because it really makes a difference with what your plan is. What kind of city do we want to have? Is it a family-friendly city? Is it just, we've done a great job with early childhood, but do we just want to do early childhood, or what are we doing for our teenagers, right? So that's going to be a really important issue. Year-round education. I think in 10 years we should be in year-round schools. We should have community schools. Our schools should be net zero, not just our handful of sort of boutique-y ones. So getting our desired conditions and our existing conditions, getting that vision forward is going to be really important. And the plan, you'll see sort of the standards for the planning process kind of mediate this, are going to be what get us there, that plan. But we have to know where we're going. We can't just do the plan. We have to know where we're going. And with that, I'll stop and hopefully give you all an opportunity to get more clarification on what the committee and frankly what the process will bring for the city. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rodney McDaniel, and I work at Powell Elementary School as the custodial foreman. I'm a proud graduate of the District of Columbia Public School System. I have been employed by DCPS for 25 years. I'm also the proud winner of the 2022 Standing Ovation Support Staff Member of the Year Award. I have seen so many positive changes over the course of my employment, with safety and education of the students at the forefront. There has also been increased efforts from Central Office, Office of Facility Management, and the Department of General Services to collaborate with the school-based custodial and maintenance teams in order to provide the best learning environment possible. While this collaboration helps to move the work each day, there are a few areas that still need significant improvement and support in order to ensure that our facilities are more than just operational. Significant support is needed with staffing, whether it be advertising open positions with the wider community or elevating the custodial position as a career path. We are consistently, chronically understaffed. I am currently running an 83,438 square foot building with a daily occupancy of over 600. I have a staff of 3. I am the only custodian on duty from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. daily. It's been this way for over 6 years. That leaves 3 team members to prepare the building for use daily, which includes cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting every classroom and common space in the building, as well as maintaining the outside grounds. Additional professional development opportunities are needed for existing staff. This might even include training for those who would like to pursue certification in a trade that they are skilled in, or to learn a new trade such as plumbing, electrical, or HVAC. This will help us to address issues that arise that can be handled by in-house staff instead of outsourcing to contractors who are not invested in the overall well-being of the school system. This could also potentially shorten project completion times. Another focus area needed is preventive maintenance. A system for checking our operational systems will ensure that there is minimal interruption to students' education and access to school facilities due to maintenance issues. Finally, consider increasing the custodial budget for supplies needed to ensure that the building is running as efficiently as possible. This budget is never enough to run a building for an entire school year, with after-school activities, systemic meetings, and increased enrollment. Thank you for the opportunity to share these reflections. I welcome the opportunity to continue this discussion with the appropriate staff on how to ensure that DCPS facilities are safe, healthy, and educationally appropriate.
Hi, good evening. President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, DC State Board of Education representatives and student representatives, and members of the public. My name is Jennifer Comey, and I'm the Director of Planning and Analysis at the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education in the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's panel on healthy school facilities. The DME is actively focused on citywide planning and coordination towards the goal that all Washington, D.C. families have access to strong neighborhood DCPS schools, complemented by high-quality citywide public school options. This work encompasses our commitment to identifying school needs and developing plans for our entire public school landscape based on analysis and community feedback. Edscape and EdSites are examples of where we shine light on key metrics and trends across our education and workforce systems. Our planning and analysis work includes facility planning, such as the Master Facilities Plan, and ranking unmodernized schools to be included in the Capital Improvement Plan per the criteria identified in PACE, which we work on in collaboration with DCPS. We recently released the MFP Annual Supplement for 2022, and this past fall released the PACE Recalculation Report. Looking forward, the DME is already deeply engaged in 3 large bodies of work that will be completed in 2023 that will further impact our citywide planning. The 5-year MFP, the Boundary and Student Assignment Study, which we have presented on to this body, and the Adequacy Study, which focuses on funding via the Uniform Per Student Funding Formula. Our 2023 MFP, building on the last full MFP in 2018, will look at school facilities across the district with the following 3 goals in mind. Ensure school facilities are efficiently utilized, ensure every student is enrolled in a modern state-of-the-art facility, and ensure every student's daily experience is in a well-maintained facility. The plan will include information on programmatic facility capacity and future enrollment and utilization trends, and will identify such recommendations as where more capacity is needed, where to collate schools or educational programming, potential boundary or feeder modifications, and system-level recommendations to streamline maintenance operations. This project is directly related to the Boundary and Student Assignment Study that we are working on simultaneously. We know that modernized, well-maintained facilities are fundamental to ensuring robust learning environments for students and staff. Washington, D.C. has come a long way. In 1998, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers assessed that 84% of DCPS facilities were in poor physical condition. The city has made significant concerted efforts to modernize and renovate facilities since. Since 2002, the district has renovated over 8 million square feet of school facilities. According to the 2018 MFP, 79% of DCPS facilities have been modernized or renovated, and another 20 school modernizations were planned up until 2024. Looking at the 2022 MFP supplement, there are an additional 9 schools slated for renovation in the latest approved CIP for fiscal years 25 through 28, and we are not done. The latest PACE report reprioritizes DCPS schools that have received only a partial or phase 1 modernization thus far, and includes 2 recently acquired new buildings. These schools will be in the queue for consideration for the next iteration of the CIP, which will be coming in the next month or so. It's not just modernizations and renovations that are critical, but also how we maintain our facilities. We have always known this, but the coronavirus pandemic made issues like air quality paramount. To help ensure a safe reopening, the city invested more than $24 million in HVAC upgrades and mobile units to improve filtration and ventilation in every DCPS school. Now with 22-23 well underway, the latest Department of General Services public work order dashboard helps shine light on maintenance in schools, and we look forward to digging into this topic in the 5-year MFP. Our focus at the DME includes both neighborhood schools and citywide schools. And by citywide schools, we're referring to DCPS schools without a boundary and public charter schools. The DME works closely with the DC Public Charter School Board to annually collect information about programmatic capacities, utilization, and conditions at the schools that we include in the full MFP and the supplementals, as well as in our annual Edscape. The 2018 MFP included key information about expected public charter growth and facility needs that we have continued to track since. While we are proud of what we've accomplished, we have much more work to do. We look forward to collaborating with the DC State Board of Education alongside other partners inside and outside of government, including school communities, and I look forward to the questions, feedback, and discussion today. Thank you.
I'm now going to go to our student representative, Taya Washington, to provide the expert student panelist testimony.
Hi, sorry, 1 second. Thank you. Okay. On behalf of Sophia Ibrahim. Hello, members of the DC State Board of Education. My name is Sophia Ibrahim. I am a member of the Student Advisory Committee and a student at Jackson Reed High School in Ward 3. I am testifying today about healthy and safe school facilities in the district. I will share both my personal experience of other SAC members, and what I hope for the future. My school is the largest high school in the district. As such, I'm sure it is not a surprise that we struggle with overcrowding. Beyond the dimension that is often discussed regarding overcrowding these days, student and staff safety with regards to COVID, I'd like to speak about physical safety in the building. There was a shooting outside of my school on November 18th. During our lockdown, we discovered that our brand new PA system was broken. Many peers of mine were in classrooms that did not hear the loudspeaker announcements asking teachers to put their class into lockdown mode. Classes went on, and as a result, the very real threat of a member of our community being harmed became that much closer to a reality. More than 2 months later, on January 20th, we had a lockdown drill and discovered that yet again the announcement system still failed in some classrooms despite reported repairs, and also that an alarming amount of our classroom doors do not have the ability to lock. The seemingly last line of contact, an app that teachers have on their phones called Rave, that's meant to allow teachers to receive emergency messaging in the event of a PA failure, is not enough. The fact that our last line of defense could be rendered useless in the event of a phone dying is horrific. Recently, with the start of the new semester, select classes have been held in trailers in the staff parking lot to combat overcrowding. With the shooting still fresh in our community's mind, the risks that come with having some of our classes detached from the main building has left many of my peers and teachers unnerved. The risk of faculty communication over the PA system is raised, And the sheer fact that there is no hallway for students to walk to the portables means that if shooting happened today during a passing period, there is far too large of a chance that a student or teacher would have been hit in the crossfire. We as a school community need a functioning PA system, classroom doors that all have the ability to lock, and a hallway constructed to lead students in the portables to have a safe school experience. Ourselves and our loved ones entrust DCPS to keep us safe during the school day, and the negligence that has led to our current experiences is unacceptable. Our lives are at risk each and every day that these pleas are not answered adequately. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our expert panelists. Ms. Butler will now call the roll for the round of member questions. Each member will have 4 minutes for questions. This is a reminder to members that 4 minutes both include your question and their response time. Ms. Butler?
Thank you, President Thompson. We will start with our student members. Are there any questions from Representative Washington?
I have no questions at this time and will yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Representative Reed?
Good evening, and thank you all for your testimony. Mr. McDaniel, congratulations on your Standing Ovation Award. And a question for you. I included, drafted my budget letter and included information similar to what you testified related to custodians, because one of my community schools went from, I think, 2 to 1, and not sure if they got remedied or not. Can you talk about that process for how those fluctuations occur? And then I have one more question for Ms. Comey.
So for us at Powell Elementary School, we've been trying to fill an open position for the last 3 years. We just interviewed a potential hiree Monday, so hopefully they can clear the process to be hired. But that process is so lengthy that a lot of people find jobs while waiting to be hired. So we had a candidate that applied for a job in August. He wasn't cleared until Christmas. By that time, he had already found a new job. He had been added to our payroll, so then we have to work on getting him off the payroll before we can advertise the job again. And most of the job advertisements are usually hearsay. There's nowhere that they can go and actually look for that job unless you're on the DCPS website or someone informs you. You wouldn't have a clue that DCPS was hiring.
Thank you for that. Ms. Comey, is there some sort of audit that happens related to facilities? Noticing some variances in what's available to students. For instance, I have Johnson Middle School, who has no field lights and is lit for their athletic facilities by Metropolitan Police Department. I have a few schools who have issues with locks. Is there like some kind of standard checklist that happens at some point, and we're looking for a certain facility issues, and then how are those remedied, or even features? So sometimes there's standard things, but then there's the, I guess, the icing on the cake features that some schools want. How is that handled?
I can answer to the best of my ability, is that there are, and I shared, I believe, a compilation of lists of the different regulations that govern facilities. It's a relatively long list. I'm happy to share that again. So there are different aspects that fire marshal, for instance, and other entities to make sure that that the facility is safe. So there's standard procedures to do that. In regards to other aspects, I believe a lot of it is around work orders and then trying to keep on top of that, which I realize is a topic of conversation. And Mary and you might have other to add to it, but I think there are aspects that are regularly audited, and then other aspects that are part of the maintenance.
And I think I have a minute. Yeah. Do I have a minute? Yeah. If a school has, am I over? I can't tell. Okay. Thank you. I was confused. So if a school wants an enhancement, how does that kind of flow in our city?
There's both small caps projects and then there's larger modernizations. So let's put the larger modernizations aside, which is what the PACE Act helps govern. And so small caps, there are a process within DCPS and its budgeting process to then submit a request.
Okay. Thank you. And I got 30 seconds. Small capital is under what dollar amount? Sorry. Okay. Okay.
So, but normally a small project might be, a million, a couple million.
Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Representative Reed. Next, we will have Representative Henderson.
Thank you all for testifying. I have a couple questions for Jen Comey. First, part of the processes you're going through, you have to project into the future, and I imagine that's very difficult. I don't know how you do that. Do you have a sense of how successful we've been in the past at projecting, say, enrollment? And I'm wondering especially how you factor in the interplay between facilities, quality, and enrollment. So that's definitely one of the factors that families are considering when they're choosing schools. How can we factor that into that kind of projection?
This is a favorite question. I'm glad you brought this up. So enrollment projections are something that we first started doing long-term in the 2018 MFP. So we did 5- and 10-year projections for the first time. Before that had been just annual for budget purposes. A lot of that is based on, frankly, on population and enrollment trends. So that has been a big focus of to date. Office of Planning does do regularly 20, 30 year out. And so those have been actually quite good. They started in the beginning of the process being quite ambitious in the beginning of the decade and then moderated them somewhat. And we actually are it's reasonably close. I think the pandemic and then the slowdown of our population growth at the end of this past decade has changed our trajectories a bit, and that's something that we're looking forward to going forward. Your question about facility modernization or maintenance is something that we do look at. To be frank, we don't include that explicitly in our factors when we look at enrollment trends and population projections, but I know it is an important factor, so I recognize that.
So a related question or concern, what can we do for those schools that get caught in the gap of they maybe got tier 1 or they haven't been modernized, but they've got some years off before they will, and they have conditions that I think we all agree are not good. They're not acceptable, but we're kind of limited in what we can do to address those. What would you say are the options for addressing some of those issues?
I think challenges that we have, which I think we can all recognize, right, is funding, timing of swing space, and then the PACE legislation was an attempt to make it a clear and transparent way of understanding of the order, right? So that's the intent of the legislation. I think the small caps and other sort of fixes until the large has been one way that has been tried to manage maintenance. We know maintenance is very important. I am hoping with this next iteration of the MFP, because we did not do this in the 2018 explicitly, is to think about maintenance and staying on top of it and getting ahead of it before we run into large problems.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniel, there's a lot of interest in vocational education. There's a school, for example, in Ward 5, Phelps, that has students who are learning HVAC, other trades. Could you imagine some way that high school students who are actively engaged in those tracks, education pursuits could help out in our public schools?
I do, but like I stated, I would think it would be best to advertise it as a career path. These jobs are entry-level jobs. They're coming in. Today's kids want to be paid good money. So we have to give them that opportunity to do so. So I would say it would be great, but we have to find a way to make those jobs interesting to those students.
Representative Best.
Thank you very much. Mr. McDaniel, when you talk about career paths and training, it just makes sense to me. It's one of those like common sense things that it's like, why didn't we think of this? So I'm glad you did. The idea of providing staff with training and certification could go a long way to making sure that the things that can get handled in-house actually do, and the larger things are, handled outside, which could exponentially eliminate some of the logjam that we see. So I just want to say thank you, and I'll definitely keep that in mind as well. My other question is my first question is for Mary Filardo, and that is, what does effective educational agency coordination look like in sustaining healthy school facilities?
Well, you've got a number. You've got DGS, Department of the Environment. You've got transportation. You've got recreation. You've got libraries. These are all agencies that actually impact families and public schools, and the public schools, what's in this plan will impact them as well. So both from a programmatic side, there are public districts where you can return a book to your school library and it'll go back to your regular library. Our school libraries could be an extension of our city library system if it were integrated from a programmatic as well as a place. So there's a lot of interesting things that we could be doing because we're a small, geographically, small city. And so, that's one of the things. But I do want to just add so that folks know, because it will be a State Board of Education issue, that there is $25 million that the federal government is making available to state departments of education to build capacity around technical assistance and training, particularly around classified jobs for facilities. So that might be an area that you could go after it and develop some kind of standards and certification and support for your your custodians and building engineers and others.
Oh, thank you very much. And the last question is for Ms. Comey. It's good to see you. Who is going to be held accountable for upholding the minimum MFP standards? And will schools be given training on how to sustain healthy school facilities based on these minimum standards?
That's a good question. I think that, and I know this is something that this body is looking at, is thinking about standards across, and there are standards certainly from a programmatic perspective from DCPS, which are ed specs, right, which the agency itself holds itself accountable to. And that we look at, something that we're doing in the larger MFP is a more intensive look at the programmatic capacities, and this actually gets to programmatic space that will be more transparent going forward. So I think the way we're thinking a lot about this now is transparency of information and being able to then track that way.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next member, we're just going to ask the panelists to speak more closely to the mic so that they can pick you up virtually. Next, we will go to, Representative Chang.
Thank you, panelists. Mr. McDaniel, thanks for your testimony. I'd love to learn more about what your day-to-day looks like and what help, in addition to the policy recommendations you're making, you would want day-to-day first.
So a standard day for me, like I said, I arrive at 6 a.m. I'm responsible for all lunch, breakfast duties, that's cleaning the cafeterias. We have two cafeterias that I have to maintain. Any heating issues, any emergencies from any students, anything, contractors that come to the building, anything that happens during that work time, I'm responsible for. So by 12 o'clock, by the time my staff gets in, I'm tired. I'm running from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. by myself daily. And like I say, no day in DCPS is the same. So you can never really prepare for the day because when you're dealing with kids and, like I say, staff, a building of 600, you never know what to prepare for.
What's the right staffing level if we could wave a magic wand?
I would say we need at least 10 people per school because you got to factor in call-outs, people being sick, injuries. For me, myself, when I get tired, I can't take off because if I take off, someone has to open. That leaves 2 people. I give back leave every year because there's no space to rest my body or just even take a mental break because it disrupts the education process. And especially with me being the head person, knowing how all operations work, I have to be available at all times.
And how has that changed in you said a couple decades working with DCPS?
I would say it hasn't changed. It's been that way since I've been here.
Okay.
Like I said, in 25 years, we've always been stretched very thin. And with me, I try to train my staff as I go, which once again, with my time, it doesn't limit me a lot of time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even in summers, when you have in summer school, summer programs, you can't fully detail a building the way you want because you still have bodies in the building.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've got about 70 seconds left if either of the other panelists have.
So there are standards for, that are kind of generally accepted for custodial space. It's about 20,000 square feet per custodian. But when you listen to him describe his day, he's not just doing custodial work. There's a lot of events that they're managing. There's grounds that they're responsible for. So you know, I think it is absolutely true that they've been underpaid, undersupported for decades. That's partly why the schools went downhill, and these new schools are going to go downhill just as fast, maybe faster, without the support on the custodial and the building engineer side.
And on the DME side, is this something that we are working on at all?
It's helpful. This is all very helpful context to take into consideration. It's
Okay.
obviously the staff that make it all happen.
Great, thank you.
Representative Patterson.
Thank you. Mr. McDaniels, thank you for your 25 years, staying with DCPS schools for that long and continue to help our children have quality schools. I'm grappling with a problem because you spoke about the hiring process. I'm a Ward 8 resident, a proud Ward 8 resident. I know there are a number of men, whether they're returning citizens and other individuals, who are looking for work, have certifications and certain things. Can you tell me a little bit more of why that was such a big problem? I think you described a problem that started someone got cleared in August and didn't get notified basically till December. What do you see in your estimation that happens at DCHR or whomever that doesn't move the person through the process to get hired?
I think there's so many different protocols because you have to be contacted by the school, human resources. A lot of times that's done through emails or cell phones. People don't have a clear timeline as to how long things will actually take. So usually when we get back to a potential candidate, they've moved on, or either sometimes another school that has found ways to skip steps can get that candidate before you. So, and then we also must be mindful with these being entry-level positions. Most of the candidates get all the way through and then can't clear background checks, can't pass drug tests. There's a number of things, and like I said, you spend all this time waiting, and by the time you get the information that they are no longer a good candidate, you have to start from scratch again and find someone willing to take the job.
Okay. So to me, it sounds more like a pipeline issue of having good candidates to make sure you get to that number that you desire to get to. Can you tell me a little bit more how you could see this as a career path? Even for our high school students, I know that not every one of our students want to go immediately to college. Some of them want to go straight into careers. Can you tell me how you would see a program like that interacting with what you do?
Yes, so as was stated with the vocational schools, we can give them some sort of incentives that if you further that education or you work for a DCPS school, there's other incentives involved, housing in the city, grants for further schooling, just ways that they can grow as a human being, and just not being a job. Like for a lot of the guys that I work with, because I go to other schools throughout the city, one of the common things I always get is it feels as though it's just a job. There's nowhere to go once you get to the top of your pay scale. So you can't go into facilities management with your years of service. You still need a degree. I've been there 25 years. I've did this job. I consider myself as one of the best at this job. I have a lot to lend to facilities management without the degree that I can't afford at this time to go and get. That's a lot of information just sitting in the school building.
I really appreciate your time. It gives me a lot to think about how we can make sure that we can equate degrees with experience, and I truly appreciate your time. I'll yield back the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just start my comments by thanking my colleague, Representative Washington, for her great comments describing eloquently the challenges that we face with overcrowding in Ward 3. So thank you so much for raising that. That is the top concern by a mile expressed by parents whose kids go to Ward 3 or who are Ward 3 parents. And it's both in terms of class sizes and then building conditions with overcrowding. It's also a concern, Director Comey, for parents who have pre-K 3 and 4 age children. Ward 3 is the only ward with no pre-K 3 due to the school overcrowding, and then only about 50% of 4-year-olds are able to get into pre-K through the lottery. When you say that you're going to, through the boundary process, make sure that every student has the right to attend a modern and safe school, will that process this year, finally with the 15-year anniversary of universal pre-K, will it include making sure that the in-boundary students in the elementary schools have access for all 3 and 4-year-olds in the city?
Thanks for the question. It is certainly very relevant to both Ward 3 and to other parts of the city where we are unable to meet full demand for early childhood seats, and we know it is a priority in the district. And so, as I mentioned before, the boundary, the boundary and student assignment and MFP will be working in close collaboration with each other, and we will be looking at the question of early childhood explicitly in the boundary study, but they will be overlapping and supporting each other. The question is often whether you actually have the space to serve, and there's also different space specifications for the early childhood classrooms.
Well, I'm excited to work with you to make sure we build that space, and we have the 5-year MFP, so I would love to be a part of that process in any way that I can be helpful, because I know Ward 3 parents would like to have livable, walkable pre-K for all our students in Ward 3. Mr. McDaniel, how do you distinguish in your role between a project that's assigned as a custodial project versus a small caps project that you might do in-house versus then kind of a repair capital project that you'd have to contract out? And who makes that decision? Do you make the decision, or do you work with DGS to make that decision?
I work with DGS to make that decision. So all custodial staff housed in DC public schools are required to do level 1 maintenance. That is doors, door closers, replace flush valve assemblies, anything where it may require the removal of something like pipes or going into a wall, or most things outside the school like railings, then that is put into a work order, and then DGS handles the small cap or the large cap projects. I think one of the things that has been a big issue with a lot of repairs in DC is through DGS. We put in a lot of these upgraded and these modern systems, but no one knows how to fix or run these systems. It's not being showed to anyone at the school level, and then you call DGS, DGS comes in, and DGS has to contract out because they can't even take care of this situation. So that was one of the reasons why I said if this was taught to in-house, we can skip that process, because I know I'm invested in my school.
Well,
I'm gonna make sure that they have the very best. So if that knowledge was passed on to me, that's less time we have to wait on DGS, facilities, procurement, or anything for parts.
Great.
So if you have it in-house, it can be taken care of.
Well, thank you. And in my last 9 seconds, I just want to say, Ms. Filardo, thank you for bringing up the issue of year-round schools and out-of-school time for teenagers. I would love to work with you on those 2 topics, but I'm out of time for right now, so thank you.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary.
Alarms, locks, PA systems, HVAC, plumbing, electricity. All of those things should be in a healthy, safe school. One of the things that happened when the school system, when DGS became in charge of the buildings and took all of the power away from the custodians and the electricians and the plumbers and the carpenters and all of the people that took care of the buildings, who know schools don't have those anymore. And the only way that we're going to fix this problem is to realize that that's not the right answer to it. Because what the testimony from Ms. Ibrahim from Wilson about the locks and the alarm system and the PA systems in the schools is not unique to Wilson. It's all over the city and all in these, and that's a new building compared to some of the buildings in Ward 4 or Ward 8 or Ward 5. And those systems haven't been working at Roosevelt since it opened 10 years ago. Since it opened 10 years ago, they haven't had the locks working, and they haven't had a workable public address system in the school. And that's not unique to any schools in any kinds of wards. It's an emergency. And we have to recognize that it's an emergency. And we have the money in this city. It's not a funding problem. It's a concept problem. And the concept is that we have to take care of our children and all the people that work in the buildings first in the city. If the mayor says she's an education mayor, then that means she has to take care of those that don't have, not the ones that do. When something goes wrong in anybody's house and they call a plumber, and if the plumber doesn't fix the problem, the plumber doesn't get paid. We pay people to open up brand new buildings, beautiful buildings, and in 1 year they don't have a warranty anymore. And the people that built it don't have any responsibility to fix it anymore. The work orders that were talked about are in a rabbit hole someplace. The custodians do an unbelievable job in the schools, and yet the system doesn't it's not a matter of pay, they should get paid more. I can't imagine. I mean, I was in a building for 47 years, and we were remodeled for about 5. But it's not that people don't go to school. They go to school because they love it. The custodians go to school because they love their work. But we don't appreciate the people that work in the buildings, and we definitely don't take care of our buildings. I'm out of time. I'll be quiet for the rest of the night, maybe.
President Thompson.
All right, so we know that's not true, that he's going to be quiet for the rest of the night, and we wouldn't want him to. So I want to acknowledge Mr. McDaniel. It is not lost on me that you said you get to your school at 6 a.m., and it is now maybe 6:30 in the evening, so I more than appreciate that you had a very long day, and it can't only be a dedication that you came here tonight to share with us, and this was a very valuable testimony for all of us. So I want to thank you for that first and foremost with my time. Second, I of course, y'all know I live in Ward 7. I'm the Ward 7 representative. I am a plumber, Panther through and through. It is no mistake that you often see me in blue and gold when I come into these education spaces, because those are our colors. I noticed that plumber continues to seem to drop on the pace modernization, and it's not because plumber's building is getting better. I live literally walking distance from it. I visit it regularly. We have problems. I'm trying to understand how that continues to happen. So I'm going to direct that to Ms. Comey first. And then I also just have some questions about how we prioritize small capital projects. like Eastern Field and others, and what we can do about the fact that our ed specs do not apply to our charters. Because many people know I am a charter graduate, and what's good for kids is good for kids. And so if we're saying those specs are good for kids, I want them to be good for all of my kids.
Thank you. That's chock full of questions. So the first one, President Thompson, about Plummer. So there was a rerun of the PACE list, not those that were already in the CIP that had a schedule, but those that had not yet made it into the CIP. And so that list was reassessed, looking at the latest data. I don't have at my fingertips why Plummer changed or did not change, so I'm happy to follow up with you on that. There were 2 additional buildings that did get added into the list, which may have had, may have done a more bouncing or pushing other schools around because they were acquired post the last time we ran it. Excel and Military Road, so those are the 2 that got added. So I'm happy to go back. I don't have it at my fingertips on why Plummer, but I do know that is a concern for other school communities.
And then can you speak to both how we prioritize small capital projects? And maybe, I don't know if Mary wants to jump in with that as well, and what we can do about this fact that we actually have discrepancy between what we apply to DCPS and charters as far as the ed specs.
You're asking some very good and very hard questions. I do know that there is a whole process of weighing and looking at different budgetary asks. How those asks are then prioritized, I'm going to have to follow up and with you on that. I don't have that at my fingertips, but it's a very good and important question. So that's number 2. I have to go back with you. And then we have 70 LEAs. Each of the LEAs creates their own specifications, but I hear you that there should be a floor on what we would expect of our schools to offer. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to be looking at it again and to think about ways in which we can make sure that those amenities are available for all of our kids, because the DME feels the same way. We have all of our kids to take into account.
Is that something you see us being able to address through either the boundary and assignment or master facilities plan, as far as literally the floor for our facilities?
I mean, I think it's something in partnership with you guys that you guys are also considering and looking at this, but I think it is something that we should be thinking about. I know one thing that we are focusing on, especially since post-pandemic, is outdoor space, as critical as that is, and that's something we'll be collecting. I know Mary had some other things she wanted to add in.
No, I just wanted to say that Plummer and some of the others, Whittier, are dropping down the list because crowding trumps condition in the PACE.
All right, that's it. I always go last. So I want to thank our panelists, every single one of them, for their testimony and their time tonight. I want to thank our members for their engagement this evening, because I'm sure that the public also learned from both the member questions as well. And we're going to take a moment to transition. Thank you all. 5 minutes. And we have a 5-minute break in case anyone wants to be a human being for 5 minutes.
All right. This is facility stuff, and this is from your 2022. Oh, interesting. Capacity. Okay. Anyway, so I put the money and the space. That's cool. That sounds great. But anyway. Yeah. So, but can you send a spreadsheet? I will send a spreadsheet because you know the way you send it over to the council. Yeah. No, they did it. I posted it on the website. Oh, you did? Yeah. So the whole spreadsheet is on the website. All the individual spreadsheets are in Excel on the yes. Oh, okay. I'll send that to you. I'll send you the link. No. They does that. Clean it up.
All right, this is the 30-second warning before we reconvene. So if you are a member or somebody who signed up to testify, 30-second warning. At every public meeting, we hear testimony from public witnesses. Your comments become part of our official record. If you would like to speak at a future public meeting, please sign up on our website at sboe.dc.gov or contact our staff by email at sboe@dc.gov or by phone at 202-741-0888. We have 17 individuals present to share public testimony. We will hear from those in attendance in panels of 4. I would also direct members to the 4 written testimonies submitted for this meeting's record. Each witness will have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. Please note that you must use the microphone at the table and speak closely because it's not fancy in here, so we want to hear you. The microphone is already on. The timer light on the table will be green for the first 2.5 minutes, yellow for the last, and then yellow for the last 30 seconds. It will turn red when the 3 minutes total have lapsed. After our public witnesses speak, we will pause for questions from board members. Members will we'll give them 3 minutes for questions for our public witnesses. Those 3 minutes will include their question and the answer. Ms. Butler will call the public witnesses to the table and the question rounds. She will also assist with timing to ensure our witnesses and members stay within their allotted time. Ms. Butler, you may begin by asking public witnesses to come forward to the table.
Thank you, President Thompson. The first group of witnesses are Scott Goldstein, Laura Fuchs, Jeanette Staten, Sherry Newsom. We will start testimony from my right, your left.
Good evening, members. Today I come to you with a different hat than normal, testifying personally, both as a former high school social studies teacher, a DCPS parent at Powell, thank you, Mr. McDaniels, and a lead curriculum writer at my other job for the Action Civics organization, MCPA Challenge. I want to start by saying I have huge respect for so many of the amazingly talented social studies educators who served on the technical writing committee. It's an all-star cast. And these standards have made several important strides, most explicitly the explicit naming of inclusion of standards that make important shifts in the teaching of race, gender, and much more. But as I read through the standards in depth, my mentality shifted starkly. So much so that I now believe the best course is to begin with the current standards and revise them with the themes of the new standards in mind, rather than trying to tinker with the new standards to address all that it has missed, which is a lot. I believe those working on the standards should have started with the current standards and what was missing and what was misguided, and then figured out how to make up for it, rather than throw it out and start from scratch. By doing so, they ended up with standards that, unbelievably, fail to mention Chinese civilization, Greece, the Ottomans, Nazis, Stalin, or even the word dictator. Though I know the standards writers were aiming to center anti-racism, these standards end up centering Europe more than the rest of the world, and the rest of the world less. That's not acceptable. These new standards also hugely miss the boat on immigrant experiences, globally, nationally, and locally. As a former DC history teacher, I'm saddened the new standards don't correct the old standards in failing to name the Mexican, Salvadoran, and Ethiopian communities in DC. DC history without the explicit teaching of the Salvadoran and Ethiopian communities is not DC history. And throughout the standards, the immigrant story is told mostly as it relates to events in the dominant culture, not through the lens of stories of these communities themselves. Clearly, a decision was made to prioritize broad themes over explicit content. To be honest, as a teacher, I always want the opportunity to go deeper with fewer standards rather than on the surface with more. I'm aware that as history marches on and we condense a longer amount of time into the same years of schooling, the challenge is immense. Not to mention the proper focus on being explicit about Black history, Latino history, LGBTQ history, and more. But switching to broader themes and removing the content was unnecessary. Instead, the compromise is to plan the course thematically but still be explicit about what content fits under each category. We must ensure standards are vertically aligned throughout the grades but not isolate themes to a certain grade band. Themes should touch down in each grade band and each be tied to modern events students can use as a mental hook. As a longtime MICVA teacher and now curriculum writer, I'm hugely excited by the inclusion of Action Civics in 8th grade. But the Action Civics frame must not be isolated to 8th grade. As part of MICVA Challenge, I regularly facilitate Project Soapbox events throughout the country. Recently was in New York and saw children as young as 5 and 6 deliver powerful speeches, breaking down an issue, understanding their target audience, and making an ask. There is truly no grade level too early for this work. In kindergarten, the standards explore why classrooms and schools have rules and consequences in not following them. This is an opportunity for democracy in action. You have the rest of my testimony, but I think there's a balance between our broad themes and the explicit content. I intended to also switch hats and testify today about mental health, school safety, and schedules, but
Mr.
happy to
Goldstein.
connect with you another time on those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. This is my second part of the testimony. So these are my guiding principles for standards. First, standards represent what students have a right to know and be taught. The current standards have removed significant portions of content, thereby removing students' rights to learn said content. There are major historical events that would be incredibly hard to justify in-depth teaching in their own right if one were to follow the current standards with fidelity and hope to cover them. For example, the Iranian Revolution, the Guatemalan Civil War and Genocide, the Indian-Pakistan split, apartheid in South Africa, and much more. Instead, they would be looped into tiny chunks to be compared and only taught in reaction to European and American actions. Second, students have a right to learn global historical content outside of a white supremacist framing and constant micro-comparisons to European and American actions. We should not be attempting to wholly make all social studies content standards flexible, aka optional. Unfortunately, in the system of limited time and resources that we are in, too often something that is deemed flexible is something that gets cut, minimized, or swept to the side for schools serving students with greatest needs, especially east of the river. I applaud DC's commitment to 2 years of world history and at the high school level, and I think that it should be continued. For many of our students, these 2 years will be the last they spend on international studies and world history. We must give students as great an exposure to the world around them as possible and preparing them to be global citizens. In attempting to balance depth over breadth, the current standards have actually increased the breadth, but all but eliminated the ability to deep dive on anything except key European historical events. If you go through the content standards, they are all about Europe, save for one optional reference to the Haitian Revolution. Example content not mentioned: the Chinese Revolution, the Iranian Revolution, the El Salvador Civil War, Pinochet, Nelson Mandela, apartheid, Ho Chi Minh. I could literally go on forever because the actual content could fit in one paragraph. Third, the standards should reflect our students and their history while exposing them to the broader world, global perspectives, and the myriad of cultures that make up our world today. We should be looking at the world from perspectives of people around the world. This is incredibly challenging due to the resources and language barriers, but it is possible. This requires us not to frame everything as a reaction to major events trademark driven by Western powers, and instead to look deeper into countries and area studies to get to know the dynamics of those regions, to then see how their history is much deeper than a pure reaction, and to better understand their perspectives on how some of these major events affected the course of their lives. We have to be incredibly intentional about what is and is not mentioned in our standards, because the standards tell us and our students what is important. What is mentioned is the Holocaust. I am Jewish, and much of my extended family was murdered in the Holocaust. But why is the Holocaust and anti-Semitism explicitly listed, and the Rwandan genocide and Islamophobia are not? What is mentioned is the Russian Revolution, again, super important, something I enjoy teaching very much. But why mention that revolution explicitly and not those from other nations like China and Iran? Basically, we need to be looking at philosophers other than Western Europeans. We haven't. It's very disappointing.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Vice President O'Leary, members of the DC State Board of Education, members of the students and the general public. My name is Jeanette Staten, and I'm pretty much just here to provide a little food for thought around communication with parents and how it should not be an afterthought. So, imagine sitting at your breakfast table on a Saturday morning. You see the sun shining through the windows, hear feel-good music on the radio, and take that deep breath of relief only a weekend morning can bring. Then you notice an email from your child's teacher, and suddenly the calm and cool Saturday morning feels are anything but. This lone email is how I learned that my son was failing in school. I couldn't understand why a teacher had waited until the end of the semester when it's no longer possible for my son to make up work to inform me of his grades. Better yet, I couldn't grasp why the teacher hadn't reached out when they noticed the initial decline in my child's academic performance. This situation was disheartening. I had always been a proactive parent. Throughout my son's schooling, I consistently held my son and his teachers accountable, but now my son was a rising senior, and I wasn't micromanaging his grades like I did when he was younger, and when he started to fail suddenly, I was shocked. I later learned that his struggles stemmed from COVID-related closures and the abrupt transition to virtual learning. When I finally learned this, I felt like I had failed my son. I felt helpless and began second-guessing my parenting style. Maybe I had given him too much space too soon. There's a fine line between taking the training wheels off of your child's bike while running behind them and leaving them to figure it out, fall, and suffer alone. And there is a fine line between empowering your child to take charge of their academic success, creating a sense of independence and responsibility as they transition into adulthood and supporting their schooling needs. I immediately scheduled a meeting with my child's teacher, and preparing for our meeting, I logged into my child's PowerSchool account, which PowerSchool gives parents and caregivers online access to their child's grades, to assess the issue and spoke with him to get his perspective on things. Together, we created a plan detailing how he would like to improve his grades. I also wrote down parental concerns I wanted to address, lack of communication, and waiting until my son was failing to notify me, which was completely unacceptable. Additionally, reaching out to me on a Saturday, yet not responding until the following week, contributed to my feelings of being an afterthought. This experience inspired me to advocate for consistent transparency, communication between schools and family. An open relationship between families and educators has always been critical, and I feel the importance is now even more heightened after the release of the 2022 DC Park results. Also, I would like to challenge the District of Columbia State Board of Education to increase parents' voices in the work and projects that you all will undertake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to present my testimony today. And this is my first time testifying, so I'm kind of nervous. I will not be before you long. My name is Sherry Newsom. I'm a Ward 8 resident, and my son goes to Thurgood Marshall Academy Public Charter High School. My son was diagnosed with a mental illness upon our move here from NC to DC in 2014. As a transplant, it was extremely difficult to circumvent the programs and resources to receive him adequate assistance. My son now has an IEP, but finding resources and supports continues to be a challenge. As a paid parent leader, I've been supported by PAVE and provided with various resources to assist me and my son. It would also be beneficial to have adequate mental health staff at his school to assist my son as needed beyond the current supports. As a resident service coordinator working in the community of DC, I see firsthand the impact and challenges children and parents endure with mental health. Please allow our kids to have a fair shot in developing a well-rounded mental health. A well-rounded mental health is vital for us all, especially when shaping young minds to prepare for adulthood. School-based mental health offers our children the opportunity to develop not only a well-rounded mental health, but also cultivate other benefits such as emotional intelligence and self-advocacy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will now call for member questions. Representative Reed. My apologies. Representative Washington.
You're fine. I wanted to say thank you all for taking the time to come out and testify today. For Ms. Fuchs, I wanted to say that your testimony really, really touched my heart from the jump, especially with your mentioning of the Iranian Revolution and the Guatemalan genocide. Those are all events that I was definitely never taught in school. So just hearing a teacher's perspective on that and seeing how much you are advocating for us just really warmed my heart, so thank you especially. That was it. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Yes. Ms. Staten, or is it Staten? Staten, Ms. Staten. You mentioned having parent voice in more of the SBOE activities. Can you give us some ideas for executing that? And I'm gonna have one more question.
So what's interesting is during the break, I asked the question, with everything we heard earlier, how are you reporting this out? How do we know if there were any quick wins? How do we know on what we're addressing is being implementized where we can feel it being felt? So whether it's a newsletter, whether it's something you can actually send to the schools that the parents can read up on and then give them the avenue to say, okay, this is how I would like to express my concerns or ask questions, that would be a lot easier. I will say communication tends to be muddled with schools. It's all sent out on one piece of paper or big email, but if there's something that you could feature, whether it's on a school's page, whether it's on Instagram, anywhere that parents are tuning into and touching, I think that would be helpful, because this was actually my first time even being here, hearing about this, and I served as PTA president of 3 of my son's schools, which was over at Paul, he was at Wedge, and at CAPS back when they had the Dorothea Heights campus, and I had never been involved in anything like this before, and now he's a junior at Bowie State, so I just think getting this out more and also reporting out on what you're doing would be helpful.
Don't pass the mic, Ms. Newsom.
Yes.
Do you want to tag on to that question?
For me, with the school-based mental health and the resources, there is nothing on the newsletter. There's nothing on the website, and so that would be beneficial for me. I don't want to have to scourge the internet trying to find resources for my son or anybody else's child. Just making it a little bit more, with so much technology out there, it's little things that we can do, like adding a web page in reference to mental health to help those who might need it.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Representative Henderson.
So one of the things that caught my eye about the social studies standards was that U.S. History 1 was moved from 8th grade to 7th grade. And Mr. Goldstein, I know that you care deeply about action civics. Could you talk a bit about the trade-off there? And if I'm hearing you right, you're suggesting that maybe instead of a separate year standard devoted to action civics, it could be integrated more broadly across grades.
Yeah, I think there should be more time devoted to action civics, whether it needs to be a whole year, whether it could be a semester course. I favor adding in action civics explicitly as a course. I do think, though, that it shouldn't be isolated to one place, and if maybe there was a semester in elementary and a semester in middle and it was part of high school, it should touch down in multiple places, and thematically, the standards for action civics, if you read them, are not very action-y. They look like traditional civic standards under the umbrella of action civics. And so there are, under the C3 standards, for example, standards that are much more action-oriented that could be utilized without recreating the wheel. And I think those should happen more frequently throughout the grade levels.
All right, thank you. And to Laura Fuchs, I feel like there's some tension in the standards being too prescriptive and giving teachers autonomy. But what you're saying is that if a standard is left as flexible because of the demands on time, it's just likely not to be taught. Is that correct?
I think, yes, and just like Student Representative Washington said, like, there are things that I think we should treat as canon, and they shouldn't all just be European. So to me, like, the Iranian Revolution is canon. You cannot teach a modern world history course and not teach it, in my opinion. DCPS, if you looked at their curriculum, it's not there. I go rogue. I refuse to do otherwise. Because I just think you can't understand the Middle East without looking at that event, and in its own right, not just from a Western perspective of like what happened and just that everything's negative. And there's lots of cool ways to do it. There's lots of people who put out stuff about it, right? So, and I get like, not everything needs to be canon, but I do think we should kind of set some like key touchstone events as canon. Then you could provide, like Scott said, like I've said, like a lot of the standards that already exist, you could put them in as like optional. Like you need direction. So like even as a very experienced world history teacher, some of the current themes I looked at and was like, whoa, how would I do that? But also like if you look at a theme, like just because there are like fewer standards there, there's actually more content required to adequately address each standard than the current standard. So in fact, they've actually
Thank you.
added
I'm so sorry the time has expired. The clock is also malfunctioning, so just wanted to pause for just a moment, but the time has expired. I'm so sorry.
So people know, our chambers are also maintained by DGS. So when we say
Just FYI.
we're having technical difficulties, just because we didn't have them once, don't mean we don't have them. We are doing our best.
Representative Best.
Yeah, thank you all for your continued advocacy. Ms. Stanton, we have to make sure that we are working with our families, because our families are the strongest advocates and our strongest allies for improving student success, which is something we'll be looking at with our family engagement standards. Scott, I wanted to talk to you. I want to kind of get in the weeds a little bit. I think that you could probably help me shine a light on a few questions that I have. I think in order for us to dive deep with this, we have to analyze the difference between standards and curriculum. For those of you who don't know, standards are like broad learning goals, whereas our curriculum is how it's implemented through a series of sequence instructional units. So part of my inner conflict is, should our standards be broad? But with that said, as a curriculum developer, Scott, do you find it advantageous to develop curriculum based off of broad themes or explicit themes? And how does that impact equity across our schools? And can some of these themes that we don't see be addressed in the curriculum?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have to do both, right? We have to have themes, and that's why I suggested kind of umbrella themes, but that they actually explicitly list the content that should be taught under each theme. And then there should be some things that are canon, for example, and then there are some things that are possible paths, right, within that. So what you don't want to do is leave up to any individual teacher whether to teach subjects that might be controversial in the classroom and say, yeah, you can teach about racial equity. In this class, kids are not going to learn about racism because this teacher doesn't want to. There's some things that have to be taught, right? And so we have to make sure that's protected. But you can give people multiple paths to go deeper, and I think that's what's important. So there was a time when I was given my impact evaluation when I was teaching a second day on the labor movement within a course on, within the standard on the progressive era. And I was penalized on the evaluation for doing more than one day on the labor movement when it was a substandard, so it should have only had one day. My students had a lot of interest in it, so I went another day with it. And I think teachers have to be able to go deeper where there's deep student engagement and there's interest. So it's a balance between those things.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Representative Chang.
is for social studies first. So, Mr. Goldstein, Ms. Fuchs, starting with you, Mr. Goldstein. I understand the point you're making around go back to the old ones and tweak it. If we were to take if you look at the ones that we've got right now, what are the pros that you see that in what has
There's some very
changed?
explicit naming of things that were not named previously, which are really important. One that I noticed was themes about teaching matriarchal societies, for example. I don't remember that being in previous standards, maybe it was, but I noticed some things about gender roles, about teaching about matriarchal societies in international context. There's some great things that were not there that were not there before and are there now. But like I mentioned, the immigrant story is really erased in a lot of ways, and that's very alarming and was not there previously. So I do think you can look at what was there previously and what was missing and what we really need to add, whether that's immigrant stories, whether we're teaching more explicitly about race and gender, and add those things back in.
Thanks. And Ms. Fuchs, your testimony last time really stuck with me around how hard it is to actually make it actionable. But same question regarding the actual things that you would keep.
I think there are some good, like, kind of broad, I think you could kind of take like 4 or 5 things out of it that you decided were like worthwhile, because they're such big concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like world being so comparative in nature. Like, I just think it doesn't invite to actually diving into the regions themselves, getting to know the people, getting to know their culture in their own right. When you're constantly just doing like micro comparisons, like, let's look at labor across the globe. And it's like a paragraph on Africa, a paragraph on Asia, a paragraph on Latin America. It's like, I hate that kind of teaching. It takes everything out of context of the regions they're in. There's place for comparison, but I think it can come from deeper understanding. But
Thank you. And moms, thank you for joining us, especially for your first testimony. My question to you is, as you've navigated the challenges that you named, who has been helpful?
So for me, my job, I'm a resident service coordinator, and so I'm privy to a lot of different resources within the city. Previous to that, I was a permanent supportive housing case manager, again, provided with resources for housing needs and those that are homeless. Before that, I was a employment specialist for intellectually disabled and developmentally disabled clients. So my job has helped me with resources on how to help my son, but everybody don't have access to the things I have access to.
Yep.
And for me, it was the school's board of directors as well as other parents on the PTA. If it wasn't for me bringing awareness to lack of communication, lack of resources, there wouldn't have been anything that we ever would have focused on or talked about. So I will say that once leadership knew about it, they were able to do something about it, but it's about giving parents the voice to do so and then allowing them room to actually share their voices.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Thank you. First, I want to applaud all the parents that are here. PAVE, when they normally show up, they do show up with all this purple wave. I've been on the board for about 2 years, and this is the first time we've had this many parents in our audience, so I want to say thank you guys for showing up and showing out, like I know you guys are about to with your questions. And I want to say hello to my friend, Faith Hubbard. With that being said, I also want to ask, I believe it was Ms. Staten, you were talking about engagement with your school. And I wanted to ask a question very specifically. Did you know that your school is required to have a community family engagement plan? Every LEA is supposed to have one per the ESSA law. Were you aware of that?
I was not privy to that, no.
Okay. And I ask you that because most parents aren't, and we need to hold our schools accountable for executing those plans. Each school is supposed to have one on the books. And I think it's high time that we, those of us who have children in schools, that we hold them accountable and do an audit of those schools that actually have their plans and have been implementing them. And when was the last time that they updated them? They need to do more with our parents. You should not be in the situation that you're in. So I would be more than happy to help PAVE and parents and any other group that would like to make sure that all those plans that are supposed to be in place are actually in place and being executed, so you don't have to come here and make sure that you get the answer or us to advocate for you, but we can advocate for other things like the mental health that you guys, I know you guys are going to advocate for later. The other question I have is for Ms. Newsom, because I am a parent of a proud TMA alum that graduated in 2009, I believe it was. And my question is not so much as a question, but how can I help? I'm very aware of your school. I know, I know Mr. Wheaton very well there and everything like that. So how can I help you in these last 56 sections? If you can give me some action plans.
My daughter also graduated from TMA, and she's now a sophomore at Delaware State. And so I love TMA. They have a lot of other great things going on, but when it comes to mental health, they're kind of weak in that area. Just having the resources available to the parents, whether on the website, they do send out newsletters. Can we have a little blog or insert, hey, if you got any mental health issues, please contact so-and-so. That'll go a long way, because then I won't have to look forward or try to reach out to this person, because I know this person, I'm running him out. He has things that he has to do, but that's my point of contact. So just having that information readily available, so when I go and look, because if I'm a parent, I'm going to go to their website, because I need to know what's going on with this. And if it's not there, then I don't know what to do.
Exactly. And those are some of the things that are supposed to be in each plan that they execute. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Great supports, however, it's not advertised.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
Thank you. I'll start with Ms. Staten. Ms. Newsom, my at-large colleague and my Ward 8 colleague covered the questions I had, but I just wanted to thank you both for coming out. And Ms. Newsom, I know this may be your first time testifying, but it was amazing. So you're natural at it, and we hope to see you again soon, because it was really compelling. So thanks for coming out. Oh, good. That's great.
My nerves are a little calm now. So
Oh, no, it was great.
be able to articulate and advocate for our kids, because they need help, and I'm here to help.
Well, you did an amazing job, and we'll hope to see you back in the future. And hopefully, if there's anything you need, just get in touch with us. We'd love to help. Mr. Goldstein, I really wanted to zero in on your point about the idea of this being maybe the wrong starting point, that if we're doing like a hypothetical red line of the standards, that the existing standards may be a better starting point. I also had a comment that I was thinking about. So, somebody suggested looking at the National Council for Social Studies and the national education standards, which makes sense to me also, to kind of at least standardize what we're doing at the broad level, across the country, and then drilling down on themes we want to teach here in DC. What do you think the starting point should be for this review when we get our experts in it, and how do we get from that starting point to a finished product that meets the needs that you think we need to meet in this?
Yeah, our standards are outdated, but I don't know that they're fundamentally misguided in what they're trying to, the themes that we're trying to cover across the grade levels. They're outdated and they're missing things. And there could be a totally different approach, and I understand the desire to go thematic, because we are trying to pack in a lot, right? So the easiest way to pack in a lot is to go thematic and broad, and then see what content can be fit under it, but then you end up missing a lot of essential content and leaving it up to chance. So I think that's a danger of that starting point. I understand the point that you're at now with the engagement process and where OSSI is, and there's been a ton of work done by really smart people on this new set of standards. So I think a little bit of both, and I'm curious if Ms. Fuchs has any take on that as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from Ms. Fuchs as well. And Ms. Fuchs, I just want to say I 100% agree with your point on making sure those important points in world history are viewed for what they are, not viewed through a lens of European history or American history. So can you add to what Mr. Goldstein said on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could combine them, but you would need to significantly reduce the new ones for those that you are adding content to. Because, again, the content's implied. It's there. I have to teach it. You can't just teach a theme on its own unless I just restate the standard and that's the lesson. So, the content is there. It's just not being said. And so it's still going to be too much to cover. So we would have to really pare it down, and then you don't have to come up with the content. A lot of it is in the standards, and a lot of it's good. There are some new things, refugee crisis, Arab Spring, things that are going on today that could be added, but those weren't added in the new ones. So it's what was the point?
Thank you. Representative Williams.
I have a couple questions for Ms. Fuchs and Mr. Goldstein. What do you think in your time serving as a DCPS teacher would be most helpful for implementation? What trust do you have within DCPS or within OSSI given that there's such a disconnect between the standards and actual curriculum?
So I will be, so kind of to Brandon's earlier point about like curriculum, I wouldn't trust DCPS with these standards at all because they already delete a lot of the existing content in their curriculum, which is why I refuse to teach it and I teach the standards. Because like, again, like the way they prioritize things is so Europe heavy, it's really sad. And like world history is too much. So like, as it's written, they'd get away with it. Like it'd be justified the way the current standards are written, what they're currently doing. And I just don't like that because like at least now I have a leg to stand on. Like with my admin, I can say, I'm teaching the standards. Like I'm actually doing it, unlike what I'm being asked to do by DCPS, and they kind of stand back and let it go. But like with the new ones, I probably wouldn't be able to get away with it to the same degree. They'd probably still let me because I'm ranting and railing, but like it wouldn't be as justifiable. So currently, I wouldn't trust the current standards.
And I would just say, so part of the testimony I didn't get to is that we want to be mindful not to turn social studies into the worst parts of teaching ELA and math, which is that you have to be on exactly this page of this book on this day, and if you're not on there, there's a punishment for that. We don't want to turn social studies into that. And so if we build standards without thinking about how we're going to be evaluated on them, we're going to totally miss the boat on the implementation. And that's where it's a balance because we do want explicit content stated, but as a teacher, I don't want it to be this content standard is on this day, and if you're not on that, right? So which totally quashes student inquiry, which is what we're supposed to be going after. So we have to think about how they'll be rolled out, how we talk to principals. If you have a principal who knows social studies, great. If you have a principal who doesn't, or an evaluator who doesn't, that might not lead to you really following where your students need to go. And so we have to think about that implementation part.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary.
I'm going to be short, I think. Because I know that my mother got that call when I was a senior in high school that Frazier wasn't going to graduate because he hadn't passed English class. All right. 50 years later, I'm still teaching English. I think that I appreciate your testimony because I hope that it is a wake-up call for those thousands of people that are watching this on cable, that they need to get involved with their schools. I think that's what the flag that was raised for me. All right. I also think that with the social studies standards, they're still in a place where there are going to be revisions. And when Superintendent Grant was talking about the public testimony with over 1,000 people testifying or sending in comments or whatever like that, we're going to hold OSSE to that because we want this. It's been 16 years since the social studies standards were last changed, and that's nobody knew who Barack Obama was 16 years ago. So you have to think of that way. History is changing every day, and what we want these standards to be is a model for the country, and that's why we want them to listen to everybody. I'll stop.
President Thompson.
First, I was actually going to ask, since it was your first testimony, if you had fun, but you already told us you had fun, which is good. It's not a competition, but we actually do ask questions here at the SBOE and really appreciate engaged witnesses, so I hope you come back. I am curious, in addition to the kind of communication points, like I heard the things that we could do, right? Some of them we do, which I'm happy to talk to you about. But I'm also curious, like, what is needed to make this experience also like more helpful and interactive, because we don't have a lot of parents that come before us. And so you're here now. What would be helpful?
From my standpoint, I have, because I care about my kid, I research and search out certain things in certain situations. So sometimes people don't have that mindfulness
And so we have to think outside of the box, and we have to meet people where they are. And so maybe, going into the neighborhoods and promoting, we need your input. Could you please come and join us? Have events, inviting the neighborhoods. I know that's kind of like a lot to ask, but I can't speak for every parent. I'm advocating for every parent, but I can't necessarily speak for them. And I know what works for me. What works for me is social media. What works for me is websites, tangible information. What works for me is a phone call, a listening ear, somebody actually listening to what I have to say and considering my opinion. Not that I'm right or wrong, but let's listen and see what she has to say. Maybe have an open forum, just inviting parents out. Not to say you don't already do that, but try to continually, consistently do that so that the public can know, hey, that it's safe for me to come here and express my opinions.
And I would just like to just reiterate what I told Representative Reed, which is I'm big about numbers and data, so it'd be nice to start with what you did and what your wins were to let me know that when we do talk, you hear us and you implement. Because we can talk all day, but I do love to see what's actually been done and what successes have taken place. So that would be helpful for me in regards to communication.
All right, so quick plug for our annual report. We'll talk about it at Oversight too. Thank you to both, getting sleepy, Mr. Goldstein and Ms. Fuchs for testifying. Of course, we're still, I want to reiterate, public comment has closed, but this is an engagement opportunity too. And so we do take seriously what people come and bring to us and continue to be in conversation with OSCE about that. So thank you.
We want to thank our panelists so much for coming out tonight. We will now call the next round of panelists. Marissa Goldstein, Jessica Giles, Charlia Acree, Sharnetta Boone Ruffin, Monique Cole, okay. We'll start at the end here. We could just pass the mic down. You'll have 3 minutes. And the light should turn red when your time runs out, but let's hope it works.
All right. Good evening, members and staff of the State Board of Education. My name is Marissa Goldstein. I live in Ward 4. My son attends Bruce Monroe Elementary School, where he's a kindergartner. I currently serve as a paid parent leader on the Ward 4 board. This is also my first time testifying. I want to start out by thanking you all for your leadership today on healthy school facilities, which we know is such an important part of creating a positive learning environment and ensuring that staff and students and families feel welcomed and valued in their school buildings. I'm testifying today about the importance of equitably investing in out-of-school time programming. We know from a robust body of research that OST programs like before and after care confer a number of academic, social, emotional, and economic benefits. These programs provide opportunities for academic enrichment, allow young people to explore new activities and find joy in learning, build important social skills, and provide safe spaces for kids that allow their caregivers to work. As we continue to support students and families to recover from the traumas and challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, these programs are more important than ever. We also know that the infrastructure around OST programming is severely lacking on multiple levels. Seats are inequitably distributed across the city, programming does not reflect the diverse interests of the city's youth across age levels, transportation is a barrier, and information about programming and financial aid remains opaque despite recent developments like the Learn24 platform. There are a number of steps elected officials and agencies across the city can take to equitably improve access to OST programming, including increasing access to OST programs by ensuring families have access to quality programs in convenient locations that meet their needs, improving information sharing about programs and cost-saving options, improving and expanding access to scholarships, vouchers, and financial aid, and increasing transparency and oversight for OST. To do this work well and to be responsive to the diverse needs of DC families, students, and communities, families need to be at the table to help craft solutions. I look forward to the State Board developing recommendations, convening stakeholders, and asking important questions that will ensure we achieve a stronger and more equitable OST infrastructure. Thank you for your time and for your continuing commitment to students.
Good evening. I'm also a first timer, so I'm a little nervous. My name is Monique Cole. I live in Ward 6. My daughter goes to Mundo Verde, and I currently serve as a paid parent leader on the Ward 6 board as well as the citywide board. I want to thank you for your partnership on amplifying DC residents' voices by actively engaging in the community, testifying in front of the DC Council, communicating with agency partners, and providing this forum for DC residents to regularly testify about educational issues and concerns. Today, I'm testifying to request your support for our PAVE school-based mental health supports. This year, our parent priorities in this area include removing barriers to licensing, something much like with the DC Bar perhaps exploring waiving into DC, improving coordination of care between schools, expanding teacher and staff training, and improving family engagement and awareness, and improving dissemination of this information. This matters to me because as a parent, I'm very concerned about the mental health needs of all DC students. About 10% of the school population, 9 to 13 million children, struggle with mental health problems. We've recognized the importance of mental health support in the past, but it's time to do more. We need to treat our children like they have endured not just COVID-19 pandemic, but also a mental health pandemic. It is also important that we address the shortcomings of our school-based mental health, including gaps in the system where needs are not being met. We have children that are experiencing adverse childhood experiences at an alarming rate. Just look around. Crime rates are high, inflation, our ability to buy basic things, just the student testimony we heard earlier. And on the first day of school at my daughter's school, there was a shooting in the neighborhood. As adults, we have problems dealing with that. Imagine what that does to children. I'd like your support in pushing for an education system that prioritizes student mental health and wellness, where all students and families have readily accessible, high-quality, school-based mental health services, supports, and education. The purpose of an education is to provide students with the building blocks to become productive members of society. These building blocks are not limited to merely reading, writing, and arithmetic. We require health certifications for physical health, and we need to pay attention to mental health as well. Students cannot bring their A game to school when their mental health is compromised. I challenge each of you to be bold in the approach to this issue, and let's think creatively about what we can do. We have to meet the moment for our kids. It is critical for all of our well-being and the future leaders of this nation. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. This is my first time too, so. Whew. My name is Charlia Acree, and my daughter attends, she's in kindergarten at Latin American Montessori Bilingual, and we reside in Ward 4. I also am on the Ward 4 board as a paid parent leader. Ooh, y'all, I'm nervous. Okay. So I'm testifying to share my vision that every family in DC has access to high quality out of school time, similar to Marissa, my fellow Ward 4 cohort member, so that our children can, 1, support their needs, their individual needs, 2, create space for them to explore their passions and purpose, 3, enrich their learning regardless of their family's income level and where they live in the city. So I sit before you, I said stand, but I sit before you a proud product of high quality OST programming. Girl Scouts, band, after school activities, summer camp, book clubs, cultural experiences, you name it, I did it. Programs throughout my youth shaped the woman that I am today. A Black female born and raised in the United States is easily going to be othered. And I have never truly felt safe, but I've always learned to be brave. Brave in my wholeness as the person that I am, and brave as the person that I've become. My privilege to participate in OST programs was integral, instilling in me a deep sense of community and achievement. But this should not be a privilege. In 2023, everyone and all of our children deserve and need these opportunities and more to explore their communities, to better understand their whole selves, and to uncover their purpose in this world. OST programs did this for me, and programs continue to develop me even as an adult. In addition to advocating with PAVE, I'm also a resident creative entrepreneur in Mayor Bowser's 202 Creates Winter 2023 cohort. I recognize these efforts that benefit me directly and all of the efforts to build DC's creative economy. I applaud the investment in the arts and extensive funding for small businesses in the city, especially in Ward 7 and 8. So imagine through your partnership and leadership, we could increase access to OST programs equitably and sustainably, creating a pipeline of engaged, enriched, equipped youth who seamlessly enter DC's vibrant creative community as their whole selves. They will benefit from what we can do now together. Research shows that art-based practices show promise as a beneficial solution for mental health services because they're in line with the whole person recovery framework. As we're navigating the residual effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, imagine accessible, equitable, and high-quality OST as a critical pathway to support our children's social and emotional wholeness. So work with us, work with PAVE, continue to help us build our children and our youth by helping them uncover their purpose and their passions in a sustainable, equitable, and accessible way. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guess it's my turn. All right, good evening. My name is Sean Boone Ruffin. I am a PAVE Citywide and Ward 8 parent board member and a multiple generation Washingtonian. In fact, Lawrence C. Boone Elementary School is named after my grandfather. My daughters, Shauna and Shanice, attend Jefferson Middle School Academy and Eagle Academy Public Charter School, both in Southwest Ward 6. Hey, hey. I chose Jefferson because of the rich culture, history, positive student reviews, as well as alumni. That's I am. I chose Eagle Academy because my oldest attended successfully completed pre-K 3 through 3rd at the Congress Heights location, where she received an amazing education that was family-centered and secure, hence it's secure. We are in a mental health crisis all over the U.S. However, in the nation's capital, we hear and see multiple killings every day, especially in Ward 7 and sadly in Ward 8. Every citizen, including school-aged children, should be trained in social emotional learning and some basic mental health training. I am grateful for having a middle school principal that loves and supports the well-being excuse me, of the child and give parent weekly resources excuse me, and give parent weekly resources in the parent newsletter, as well as to give students the necessary tools that they need to recognize and identify when they need to ask for help. Having school-based mental health is essential, sadly, due to students unknowingly living in DC with PTSD, anxiety, and other mental health disabilities. By receiving mental health services in schools, students will be able to get the necessary mental health help that they need desperately. School-based mental health also can include group therapy sessions where mediation can be in play, and that cuts back on fights, that cuts back on disrespect, that cuts back on not knowing the unknown. Let me switch over. Out of school time. So out of school time can go hand in hand with school-based mental health because, again, we can use that as group therapy. This can also help train school-age students to learn and understand the social, emotional, and mental health needs that they so desperately need to understand coping strategies. It's sad as a school-based teacher that my students do not know how to understand the word no. They don't know how to cope when they hear the word no. By teaching school-age students about their mental health and about stopping the stigma in their household and saying yes to mental health, it gives us a better and brighter future for balanced, well-being students in the future that turn to adults. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We will start with our student representatives. Representative Bernstadt.
Thank you. Good evening. I had I think 2 questions. The first is about out-of-school resources. I was wondering if you think those are best focused citywide or on the individual, like LEA and school level.
I can quickly answer that. So being a product of an out-of-school program, when I was in DC Public Schools, which I am a member of, well, alumni of, we had programs night to day, you know, day to night. We didn't get out of programs to 9 p.m. and they were more beneficial when they were at the schools because it helped the demographic and the population of the neighborhood. It's like we're already having issues with taking our kids to and from school because a lot of us don't even have our kids living and going to school in the same ward. My kids live in Ward 8, however, we cross the bridge every day so they could be safer in a different, brighter community that gives them a better, you know, wholesome environment. So I feel as though it should be based off school.
Okay, thank you. The last question I have is about school-based mental health programming. Do you imagine some of the more effective responses to be in collaborations with things like school-based health centers that focus more on physical health, or do you imagine them to be, how do you imagine this manifesting in the most effective way possible?
Thank you for your question. I think it needs to be in the school. I think that our school staff, everyone who touches children in terms of interacting with children, need to be trained to recognize mental health issues as well to just have preventative things that they teach that's built into the day so that we can address the mental health issues.
Thank you all for your time.
Representative Washington, do you have any questions?
Thank you all for your time. I don't have any questions currently.
Thank you. Representative Reed?
Alrighty, so this is open to anyone at the table. The impact of transportation on access to out-of-school time. Anyone want to talk about that and provide solutions? I'm sorry, put my finger down.
So again, it'll be based off of the school. You know, a lot of schools are turned into community schools, which helps the child as a whole, helps the family as a whole. So therefore, we don't have to transport to various different locations and then they get stuck in traffic or they get stuck in another neighborhood beef shooting. So if they stay at the school, then it'll better provide for the student as a whole, as well as the parents as a whole, because everybody can work together, from the mental health therapist on up to the principal, on up to the security guards, so on and so forth. Everybody will be on the same page. Hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
I would encourage us to consider more broadly. I live in Ward 6. I live in Southwest. My daughter goes to Mundo Verde. It would be more helpful to me to have something in my neighborhood because trying to get up North Capitol to get to her, to come back home, you know, that's a challenge. So while if your child is in the community, community-based things would be most helpful. There are certain circumstances, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, where having it at this actual school might not be the best way.
And with 30 seconds, before care, anybody want to give solutions, ideas about what that currently looks like and anything that needs to be addressed?
I think that there should be a universal kind of approach to before and after care, where maybe we're subsidizing or we're incentivizing individuals who can offer those services at the schools to make them want to be there. Because right now, there's not enough staff to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Henderson?
First question for Ms. Cole. You mentioned coordination of care between schools. Could you say more about that? When does that come up and how could that be made better?
So that kind of issue comes up if a child is transferring between different schools, if they're finishing at elementary and they're going to middle school and they've built a rapport perhaps with the people who they've been seeing, and yet they go to a new institution with a blank slate. And while we don't want that to be prejudicial, if that might be the case, but we do want to equip those new people, those new practitioners with the information that would be most helpful to helping that child.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. And to Ms. Goldstein, Acri, and Boone Ruffin, you all spoke to out-of-school time, and Representative Bernstadt and Dr. Reed's questions got at this, but and maybe it doesn't matter like what the delivery method is, that you just want high-quality programming, but what preference do you have for like where and how these things are delivered?
I mean, I think, you know, speaking as a first-year DCPS parent, my family hasn't had that much experience yet, but, you know, I think for us, our considerations are like, you know, our kid is 5, he can't walk to something, and then if it's, you know, school dismisses at 3:15, and we have full-time jobs, how do we get him where he needs to be? You know, and so I think for, you know, a 5-year-old, our considerations are like, you know, is it safe? Is he loved? You know, the content, I think, is like, you know, not as critical at that point, but I can see, you know, as he gets older, if there are more specific things that he wants to do, it feels much more difficult to figure out, like, how do we get him there without, you know, paying somebody to take him, without having to take off in the middle of the afternoon. It just doesn't feel like a seamless experience for families. And it feels like then you wind up defaulting to like not what's best for your kid, but like what is most convenient, which is not necessarily the right solution.
Thank you. Representative Best.
So first, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. These are two extremely important topics. Today, I'm just going to focus on one. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. So when we think about mental health support in our schools, we tend to think about it as a result of a crisis, or because a student has a 504 behavioral intervention plan or an IEP. I believe that mental health support for all is something that we really need to start to think about as preventative measures and overall well-being. So we're arming our students with the strategies to help them throughout life and not just as a result of a crisis. And so I welcome any opportunity to engage with you all on this topic. Oh, there we go.
So at Jefferson, during homeroom, they actually do social-emotional check-ins. Oh, sorry. They actually do social-emotional check-ins here. This is where they open up about how they feel, what happened the night before, what happened on the way to school. Just like earlier today, there was an incident at the school where they already sent us a parent letter letting us know, hey, we're going to do social-emotional check-in in the morning because of what happened in the school. All the kids weren't involved, but a lot of them saw what happened, so therefore they're going to need that touch basis. And again, I'm very grateful for Principal Doman to reach out to the parents to let us know what happened and to let us know that our babies will be taken care of in the morning mentally.
I love that. And I'd seen a model very similar a few years back over at Ron Brown as well, and definitely think that it's something that should be really explored as we start to think about how do we build this out. Yeah. Thank you.
Representative Chang.
Question for all four of you around the mental health theme. I'm curious, your kids, when they're in school, who are the adults that they feel comfortable sharing their emotions with and sharing what's going on with?
My daughter, I think she feels fairly comfortable with all of her teachers. I think that they do a fairly good job at Udo and teaching social emotional awareness, and so they do build that into the day. And so I think that to some extent, and I don't know the formal training that they do there, but it seems as though they've done something to encourage kids to share.
I know at my daughter's school, she's very close to her aftercare teachers as well as to her classroom teachers. And so she's always giving them hugs, talking to them. She's very comfortable with her out-of-school time coordinators.
At my daughter's school, my youngest, she's at Eagle, but she's only 3, so we're getting there. But my oldest, they have a tier process. So they have to go to the mental health support therapist that is there. If that person cannot help, then they transition it to the school counselor. Then after that will be the assistant principal or teacher, and then the principal is the last result. But truthfully, everybody is all hands on deck when it comes to the students' mental health. It doesn't matter where they are. They can, send an email because they all do have access to laptops. So they can send an email and say, hey, I need help. Or they could just talk to a security guard. So truthfully, they have that rapport in the school to have that type of connection.
Thank you. Representative Patterson?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Again, thank you, PAVE parents, for being here, speaking to both issues that are very near and dear to my heart as a parent of a 8th grader and a 6th grader currently. I'll do mental health maybe in the next round, but I want to focus on out-of-school time. A problem that I have, and I hope you guys can help me kind of address it, is that many of the schools are very inequitable as far as they'll offer programming, but not every child can pay for it. Case in point, I'm a Ward 8 resident. My kids go to a school outside of Ward 8, and my daughter was able to be part of a dance. That she found her passion and her purpose, as you say, okay? She still goes back to that school now to help her teacher teach dance, but dance costs. Outfits cost. I see a lot of kids when I pick her up, they would love to be in dance, they can't afford to be in dance. And it's very disheartening to be able to afford it and watch other kids not be able to afford it. It's very disheartening. What would you guys recommend in how we make it more equitable for out-of-school time for those kids who do traverse the city and there are programmings in other areas where they just can't afford those programs?
I have a student that was, my oldest, she was also in dance. We stopped because of the cost. And transitioned over to school activities because it was free. And that was the main reason. So I believe if you have available scholarships, grants, or even make it so some programs are free. I know even free programs, however, it got to be in safe neighborhoods. Then yes, they will have a wait list. Yes, they will have people that are interested. However, it could be free and it could be right there on MLK or in the Mellon, and nobody will go because of the safety concern.
Thank you. Thank you. Wish I had more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Goulet?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see the purple wave of PAVE here today. I love it. Thank you all for coming out. And two of my favorite topics to talk about, both near and dear to my heart. I was fortunate enough to be on the Committee on Health on the council side when we did school-based mental health and brought that in. I know 2 years ago, we were grappling with some funding issues for the program, reimbursement issues, because the billing issue with a lot of kids being virtual, it was difficult, and we needed to put an add-on rate on there to make sure that each of the providers would be stable. I didn't hear that in the list of asks for this year. Has that been rectified now, where each of the providers has financial stability, where we're not worried about needing to put the add-on rate on? Are they billing at the level that you think will keep that stability? Do we know yet? And that can be to either, I think, Ms. Cole, you mentioned that, and then also Ms. Boone-Ruffin, so whichever. I'd like to take it.
So, if I'm not mistaken, we just got awarded some money for out-of-school programs as well as school-based mental health programs. If I'm not mistaken, we were just in the budget forum last week with the mayor, and she was stating that a lot of the out-of-school programs will be pushed through education, so it can be funded. That'll be very beneficial for not only the parent but the community as well with the students, because we don't have to worry about funding coming from, trying to find funding. So if we help out with the public as well as the private funding, then that'll cover all costs for out-of-school with the educational background.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think the clock's going faster than it was before, so I'll just ask one additional thing on out-of-school time. Would there be a benefit to talking to the students and doing like a student survey to ask, what they would want to see for programming, and then we could build from there? I really like the mayor's commitment to out-of-school time programming. I think it should be free and universal to address the issue that Council Patterson, not council member, Representative Patterson raised, and to make sure that we have that available for everybody, but the things that kids are interested in. So is there anything like that out there, or would that be something that would be beneficial?
Thank you,
And I'm out
Representative.
of time.
Goulet. We'll now go to Representative Williams.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I share your concern with these issues as well. I have a couple different things. One, Ms. Boone-Ruffin, like I agree that so I'm currently also a 12th grade teacher, and I think when things are able to be addressed whole school, like they're just so much more effective than each teacher kind of taking it on, a one decision or one classroom at a time. And so that leadership and developing like school-wide solutions is so important. So it was great to hear that. Ms. Cole, you had mentioned briefly just kind of like removing barriers with certification. Can you just kind of like share more of your thoughts around what you're saying? I know that we're trying to make sure we have more counselors in our schools, and it's been really hard to like meet the staffing needs, but kind of just where your thoughts were on that issue.
Well, I have a couple of people that I'm aware of, this is not my space that I work in, but who have shared with me that there are additional hurdles to working in DC rather than Maryland and Virginia, additional testing requirements, additional residency requirements, so to speak, and I just feel like I'm an attorney, so I waved into DC. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, why can't that be available for these very important practitioners that really, really are needed in the schools? And so when they've been cleared in terms of safety in our surrounding jurisdictions, why can't we use that to help get them in the schools to meet the needs?
Thanks. And then my last question is kind of around being preventative with mental health, particularly with like younger kids, right? Like I think learning how to communicate emotions and like all of that's very important, but also in being proactive, like do you feel like your children or younger kids are getting enough like outside time just to be able to kind of be kids and connect and not be over tested so that like they're able to develop healthy social relationships and then that feeds, mental health generally speaking? Can I get a quick response?
The time has expired. Vice President O'Leary, you could yield some of your time.
Thank you all. I have a question, believe it or not. Do your children, and I'd like all of you to answer. Do your children's schools have nurses and mental health professionals in the building?
There's a nurse at my daughter's school. I'm not sure if there's a mental health professional. If there is, I'm not aware. So maybe that's a gap in knowledge or a gap in communication, but they send messages 25,000 times a day. So if I haven't heard about it, they must not have it.
We're fortunate to have a partnership with Mary Center. So we do have school-based mental health in the building and social workers. And I know that one of the social workers had sought an external grant to bring in additional providers because she didn't feel that they were being staffed at the levels that they needed for the students.
My daughter's school has a partnership with WISE, and so they do have people who come in to help.
And a nurse?
So at Jefferson, they just got a nurse. The nurse was part-time, then the nurse left because they had to go to another school. So we just got a new nurse. However, they also have a social worker, I had to look it up. Social worker, school psychologist, actually 3 social workers, school psychologist, mental health clinician, another school counselor, so this per grade level, as well as a behavior mental health lead and a behavior health specialist.
Great, great. There was a method in my madness in that every school should have nurses and mental health professionals, especially after what we went through the last 3 years.
Thank you. President Thompson?
Ms. Boone-Ruffin, when you said your kids leave Ward 8 to go to a safer, brighter community, girl, that hurt my spirit, okay? So I want to acknowledge that at the same time, of course, like, Lawrence Boone is a legend. So I want to acknowledge that. What I wonder, you all sat here and listened to the panel on like healthy school facilities, right? And I want to be clear that in our definition of healthy, we are both talking about mental and physical health. I am curious if you all have any thoughts as far as like what that vision looks like. Like if you could design a school that incorporated the things that you are talking about, what does that look like?
So for me, I'm a school teacher. I'm in PG County, sorry. So a state-of-the-art clean building, like clean drinking water or filtered drinking water, no water leaks in the roof, no mice. Like we have an infestation of rodents in these DC public schools, specifically in Ward 8. And that's an issue for me, and I was born and raised in that area. However, when I cross the water, I really don't see it in these schools. Their lights are bright. They have clean, up-to-date buildings. The food is up-to-date as well. Cleaning facilities, clean classrooms. That is a huge deal for a child to come from a not so pretty location and then go to a beautiful location, and they're able to think clearly and be clear to themselves.
My daughter's school is brand new, and so I'm glad that she has that opportunity. But she also goes currently to a satellite location where they had to move the playground from where it was outside the school to inside of a terrace because they've been on several lockdowns throughout the year. They're now between buildings with a makeshift playground because it's not safe in the neighborhood for her to be able to play outside. And she complains every day saying, I like the old playground. Why do we have to play over here where there's no sunlight? But that's going into the health and the safety of the school building for the health and safety of the children. And so taking into account the grounds as well as the people who are in the grounds and in the buildings going to the school.
Thank you. We would like to thank all the panelists for your testimony, answering our members' questions, and we are ready to call the next group. Okay, next on the list, we have Keisha Clark, Taisha Andrews, Simone Scott, and Ricardo Bielba. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Clark on the end.
Good evening, President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and the DC State Board of Education. My name is Keisha Clark, and I live in Ward 6. My daughter attends Eastern High School. I am currently a paid parent leader on the citywide and Ward 6 board. I'm testifying today because mental health has always been an important issue to me, but now after experiences with my own children that I detailed in the Washington Post and experiences in my community, I see more clearly how critical school-based mental health resources are. Mental health plays a crucial role in how students show up to school and show up in life. It encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Mental health influences their cognitive, their perception, and their behavior, and determines how individuals handle stress, interpersonal relationships, and decision-making. Children oftentimes know something is wrong, but they don't know how to communicate it. Because of this challenge, mental health struggles may show up as poor behavior choices at school or at home. A student may become withdrawn, their grades may slip, they may have outbursts, and these behaviors can lead to in-school consequences like detention, suspension, or being labeled a bad student. These consequences do nothing to address the underlying mental health needs and only lead to increased time away from the classroom and subsequent learning loss. Paid parent advocacy on school-based mental health supports is vital because it gives voice and agency to DC students and families. Our students deserve a world-class education, an equitable one that holistically meets their diverse academic and mental health needs. It is important that we hold legislators and policymakers accountable for providing access to mental health supports in our schools. We cannot expect our students to excel academically when we have not met their mental health needs. This is why school-based mental health has been one of PAVE's priorities for 5 years in a row. My work as a Ward 6 citywide PLE board member has empowered me to collaborate with community partners and policymakers on decisions that impact children's mental health. I know firsthand that when we harness the power within us by sharing our stories about school-based mental health, elected officials and policymakers will hear us and make the needed systemic changes to create an environment that best meets the needs of our students.
I wore the mask for show. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Taisha Andrews.
Could you speak a little closer? Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Taisha Andrews. I'm a native Washingtonian, Ward 8 resident, 14-year DC government employee, advocate, mother, and wife. I come before you today as a Ward 8 citywide board member for PAVE, Parents Amplifying Voices in Education, to speak about my thoughts on funding school-based mental health supports for DC public schools, specifically schools in my ward, Ward 8, and schools in Ward 6 and 7, where my children attend school. I have a 13-year-old eighth grade son at Jefferson Middle Academy, and a 6-year-old first grader at Plummer Elementary. Both of my sons were diagnosed at a young age on the spectrum of having high-functioning autism. As a product of DC public schools, I did not want my children to attend DC public schools, especially in our neighborhood. Therefore, I sent my oldest son to charter schools when he was younger, thinking it would be better. However, the charter elementary school system failed my oldest son. I do not believe he graduated from the charter elementary school with the skills he needed to succeed in middle school, so I pulled him out of the school and sent him to DC public schools. But not in my neighborhood. Due to, due to my assistance, both of my sons have been doing very well in DC public schools. However, I would like all DC students to do well in school, and I would like DC public schools in Ward 8 to provide the same level of education and safety and enrichment that my children are getting in Ward 6 and 7. Because I have limited time to speak, I would like to focus on my youngest son, as that experience to express is a lot shorter than the experience of my oldest son. With that, I'll hurry up and get to the point. It is a known fact that our countries excel in education other countries excel in education compared to the U.S. because other countries focus on the family, whereas the U.S. focuses on numbers. The numbers then, in turn, equal money. Both parents and teachers need support from each other for each student to succeed, and city leaders are just as responsible for the lack of educational support as parents. Mental health is and will continue to be the core focus for families and teachers to provide a successful educational experience for all students. Plummer already embodies this environment, but needs additional funds and resources to succeed and go above and beyond. The Benning Ridge neighborhood, located on the borderline of Southeast and Northeast DC, has not had an excellent reputation over the years. There's a fair amount of crime, drugs, and loitering in the neighborhood. This area usually would incur many individuals dealing with mental health issues in the neighborhood, and not typically a place you would want to send your child to learn. No wonder you would never be aware of the precious gem we call Mary H. Plummer Elementary. And I'm running out of time. I'm not going to be able to finish. I didn't know my speech was so long, so I guess I'll stop. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Villalba. I'm the father of an 11-year-old girl that attends a charter school now, but she did go to Mary Reed Elementary School. I'm a business owner. I own Washington Digital Media, and I recently established DC Media Academy, teaching filmmaking and acting for the future filmmakers of DC. I'm here today because I was a member of PAVE for 3 years. PAVE called me up and they say, we have no dads available to come today. So dads, if you guys are looking, you need to come and you need to testify because you cannot let all these mothers do all the work. Okay, so that's a shout out to all the dads. As a father, I have 4 children. 3 of them are away in college. I got to thank their mom too because they did an excellent job. But I'm here mostly talking about DC public schools because I was a DC public school a student. I came here to the United States in 1988. I went to Alice Deal Middle School, and then I was transferred to Wilson High School. And when I heard today some of the speakers and talking about how the school system is acting, I just feel that nothing has changed in 35 years. I ended up dropping out of Wilson High School because I didn't feel I was getting the proper education. And the reason I dropped out was because there was a program created by Ayuda in which they were giving us $200 a week to attend a 6-month program to learn to become a paralegal and obtain your GED. And to me, that was more inviting than attending a DC public school. And plus, I was getting $200 back in 1991. So I feel that something needs to be done. I just can't believe it that DC public school is still operating the same way that was operating 35 years ago. When they talk about Wilson High School and the things that's going on in Wilson High School, those are the same things that was going on when I was there. I remember the speakers not working. I remember some doors being unlocked. I knew which door from the school we could sneak out and things like that. So, you know, when I hear all these things, I'm like, what's going on? I mean, what do we need to do as parents to force the DC government or the school system to improve the education? My two sons that are in college now, they all graduated from Arlington Public School. Arlington Public School has a much better system. Why can't we adopt some of their things and bring it into DC Public School? They do have in-house drug and alcohol counseling. They do provide mental health. They have counselors that support the kids to attend college. Even after years of graduation, they can go back. Well, I think that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear board leaders and fellow members, thank you for meeting with us today to hear our voices and testimony. My name is Simone Scott. I am sharing my time today as a parent of 2 children thriving at 2 of our cities east of the river charter schools. In addition, I am a 2 board member holder. I hold parent positions in both Digital Pioneers Academy and the other PAVE, organization Amplifying Voices of Education, as you are familiar with. Thus, I appreciate your consistent consideration of our ask. As we know, safety, high quality, equity, education, mental health, accessible, affordable programming during and outside of school are matters you are addressing. With limited time, I have gathered some points I believe are necessary to share. First, to my community, our educational lottery system is a privilege. Having the ability to select the best schools we believe suitable for our families, again, is a privilege. Safety is a major concern everywhere in our city. However, every child and staff member deserves the right to be safe in their school environments, and it starts with us. We have to collectively increase our presence in our classrooms, schools, communities, and youth programs to positively address the increase of youth offenses, especially during the academic day. Second, it is imperative for the safety of our students that we continue to explore how we can extend the DC Connect service program to fulfill the needs around out-of-school time enrichment. Further, I ask you to consider supporting implementing an elective magnet program model for our schools to increase career readiness and cognitive behavioral strategies. Both have shown effectiveness in elevating the school setting and better servicing the needs of every student on their level. This model allows educators, parents, and professionals to place scholars in their particular pods for their specific developments, increasing the probability of on-track scholars. In addition, pairing parents and students with trusted professionals to provide the proper resources for the family together to remain on target helps students and increase parental participation. Lastly, although college readiness is our academic mission, I find many of our kids crave a more creative, rigorous curriculum. Reintroducing vocational trade learning back into our schools is critical. It creates the ability for our principals to build more local, national, and international relationships. As our scholars earn their credits required for graduations, these experiences build more life skills and accessibility to sustain any continuing education or career path, and that also reaches down to our parents, serving the whole child. To close, studies have also shown schools that expanded meditation, such as transcendental and mindfulness practices, during the school day have also proven to lower hyperactivity, increase focus, and stimulate creativity within their scholars and school staff, promoting overall school-based mental health. Lastly, we should assist our DC committee's progress further in reciprocity methods around hiring quality professionals in positions unfilled. Thank you very much. That is my time.
Thank you all for your testimony. We will now turn to our board member questions, first with our students. Representative Washington.
Hi, I wanted to thank you all for your time. To the man in the gray, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but I was wondering what aspects of your education you felt were lacking most for you to have to drop out.
Most of the English I learned, I learned when I went to Alice Dew Middle School. I think the ESO teacher I have there was very good. History, Black history, I learned that before I even came to the United States watching Roots. It was a series. So I feel that our educational system, especially in DC, is failing our students. We're not preparing our students to be successful in life. Our students are, I'm a business owner and I try to hire local people. A lot of, local residents sometimes, they cannot even write, So there's a lot of things that I feel the school system has failed, especially DC public schools.
Thank you.
Representative Bernstadt.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I think I have two questions. The first is for Mr. Ricardo. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. You mentioned some programs like that Arlington schools have, like in-house drug and alcohol counseling and college supports years after graduation. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on what those two specifically look like.
Yes, so my two sons, they attend the Arlington Public Schools. They graduated from there. Both of them are attending college now. So basically, one of the programs that the school had was when my son was becoming a teenager, they had a program in which they invited us as both parents. We were separated parents, but we ended up participating at a program in the school, preparing us to deal with the teenage years. They taught us about how the brain is developing during the teenage years and how we were going to be dealing with a new human being in our houses, that it was going to be completely different. That's one program. Another program, if you get caught doing drugs at the school has in-house drug and alcohol counselors. And you get your support in the school, during the school hours.
I think that's the only questions I have time for. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Yes. What's your name, sir?
My name is Ricardo Villalba.
Villalba?
Yes.
Are you, Mr. Villalba, are you familiar with the Rec for All grant community from Department of Parks and Rec?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I would like to know about it.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for your business to apply for that recreational opportunity. And on the end, what's your name?
Simone Scott.
Miss Scott?
Yes.
There's another parent in she's in 7, but who wants to connect related to similar topic about the programming. And I would love to connect you to in advocacy efforts, because I think she's going at it right now by herself and don't want her to burn out. So if we can figure out a way to connect, that'd be great. Over the last couple of panels, I've been noticing a theme of safety, not necessarily in school, which I do know school safety is, but in your testimonies, I'm hearing a theme of safety outside of schools. What are elements of community safety that you all would like to see put in place that may not currently be there?
One specifically for me was during the budget forum last weekend. I had the opportunity to speak to the police chief, and I asked him one simple question, which was, I'm confused on what the police officers actually do in regards to whether it's protecting people or protecting property, because when it comes to certain things, I'm very either confused on certain things, and so for me, that would be one main thing of what are our safety precautions and measures in place right now. What is actually being funded, and what do those programs actually look like, and so that we can begin to as a community, begin to understand those basic foundations. Thank you.
Anybody else? 10 seconds.
One of the things I think would be helpful is more kind of a coming together or a partnership between the students and the police. The students have such a negative connotation with police, with security.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Representative Henderson.
Ms. Clark, you mentioned that school-based mental health has been a PAVE priority for 5 years now in a row. I'm just wondering if you're seeing progress or if like the needs are changing or it just continues to be a priority. Could you?
No, I think we're definitely seeing progress. I think we've been able to accomplish some of our budget asks and the many things that we have on our list. So I think there's definitely progress there, but there's always work to do. One of the things we do every year is survey the parents, and we come together and talk about what are some of the most pressing needs. And school-based mental health is always at the top of the list, and that's why we continue to do it. But we're grateful for some of the initiatives that's taken place. We've worked with Chairman Mendelson. We've worked with the mayor to get some of our asks and some of our budget asks complete. We still have a list that I could run down for you real quick if I had time. But it's still an important issue, so we want to keep it at the forefront.
Thank you. And Ms. Scott, I think you were talking again about, a previous panelist mentioned this, the issues in DC for clinicians versus in Virginia or Maryland. Could you speak to that?
Oh.
No, I'm up for Ms. Scott.
For me?
Yeah.
I don't remember speaking in regards to Virginia, but if you can rephrase your question for me.
Clinicians being able to work more easily in other states than in DC. Maybe I misheard you.
Yes, that may be a part of your testimony in regards to just how the programs in Arlington were implemented and how that made a difference in regards to your family.
From my understanding of being part of PAVE for the last 3 years is that mental health was a big issue when I was part of it. And one of the challenges that I see that DC Public School was having is finding the right people, especially people of color, or people that were more understanding of the culture. And that still continues to be a challenge. And I feel that if DC Public Schools was educating
Thank
our
you,
students
Mr.
better,
Ricardo.
more social workers.
Thank you, Mr. Ricardo. Representative Best.
It's great to see so many familiar faces. So thank you again. As a former special education teacher and a person who's benefited from mental health supports over various key times in my life, I look at this as a priority. When an individual is going through a mental health crisis, nothing around them matters. And even though the world keeps going, your world stops. Limiting our students' ability to be productive or to just live a healthy and safe life. So this is bigger than A's and B's. I don't have any questions, but I want to thank you for doing your part. And I look forward to engaging you on these issues to ensure that we are doing the same. And I just want to let it, just stop with that, but just making sure that I'm emphasizing that this is significantly bigger than, how our students are performing. And so, once again, I welcome the opportunity. I'm not just saying that. Please reach out to me, contact me. I wanna be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Chang.
Ms. Andrews, I wanted to see if you wanted to take a chance to finish your testimony.
Let me speed talk. Okay, I stopped at presenting plumber. Here's a short history timeline for you. All school-based mental health supports vary by school based on budget and need. In 2021, PAVE conducted a 2021 fall back-to-school survey where we learned that 55% of caregivers are unsatisfied with the mental health and social-emotional support DC schools give their children with IEPs. Outside of that, the National Survey of Children reports that almost 50% of children in the U.S. have experienced at least one type of severe childhood trauma. 18 million are secured for DC schools for the next 2 fiscal years. This funding can be used to conduct a citywide needs assessment to see what other schools need, the same resources and more resources that all DC schools, including Plummer, can achieve better scores. Increased funding would ensure hiring of more mental health professionals and other staff to assist them. All schools need increased access to mental health professionals. Imagine the heights Plummer can achieve with more funding to support their school-based mental health supports. As a parent, I had many reservations about sending my youngest to Plummer. However, Plummer has created a village that continuously exceeds my family's expectations. Plummer Elementary has and continues to defy the odds as a small grade school with most of its students being considered low income. Imagine the heights and academic goals the school could reach with additional funding to support the mental health needs of the Plummer community, including students, staff, and families. And I'm still not gonna have enough time to finish, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Yes, thank you again for coming here. I see some familiar faces. I'm going to follow on the train that my fellow Ward 8 colleague was talking about, to go a little bit different direction and go to safety. If each of you guys could tell me a little bit how you feel about SROs. Again, I'm a Ward 8 resident. I've heard both sides of the story of some people want SROs in their schools. Some of them do not want them in there. And just very briefly, if you go down the line, what's your opinion? Just your own personal opinion.
I think SROs are an important part of the security of the school, and with the proper training, I believe they would be important to the environment.
So I honestly didn't even know what SROs were until recently when I had to do an interview for a news reporter. And once I actually did my own research to figure out what they actually were, I thought to myself that they probably are needed, but I really don't think they're doing the job that they should be doing, and that we should possibly have members of the community taking that job over versus like a police officer that most children probably don't trust based on the media or the situations in their neighborhood. So I think that maybe we should have seniors who care about the community that, have experience to volunteer to, fill that role in schools, to build, a bonding relationship between the school and the children.
I would say for me, building a relationship is important. And then not just that, but I also believe that we need preventative measures in place as far as like ROTC programs, those type of initiatives, in order for students who are having challenges can have an interim where they can get those supports, as well as families who are struggling.
Thank you all for your answers.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
Well, thank you. I mean, you had a lot of great testimony, a lot of great issues, so I'll try to just put out a few things here in my 2 minutes. So, Ms. Scott, you mentioned the idea of, mental health supports, and, I liked what Representative Best said earlier about the idea of them not just being for people who are in mental health crisis, but the idea that everybody could benefit from them. How do you see the existing school-based mental health program right now growing to try to accommodate those needs? And would it be within the setting of the school-based mental health program, or do you think it would be integrated more into the curriculum? How do you think we could reach every student? Because I think it would benefit not just people who really need the deep help, but just people who can excel with that additional awareness of themselves.
Great question. I feel that curriculum-based is important because it ensures that we're allotting the time and the funding in order to roll those programs out. The other thing is to ensure whole child wellness, which is incorporating, for me right now, as a TANF recipient, I'm finding that there are a lot of business entrepreneurs, like the gentleman sitting next to me, where our city is not necessarily utilizing as many bodies and minds that we have in our city that can begin to implement right now, as we're dealing with the reciprocity opportunity to open up
our city to different states to have clinicians and other professionals come into our school, but I feel that there needs to be something in place prior to rolling that full school-based mental health program out. And I feel that moving from job readiness and more so into career preparedness and connecting not just the academic for the children, but also reaching for the parent. There are a lot of parents that, like ourselves, who actually want to provide services, whether it's through business entrepreneurship or other ways, whether it's hotlines or things like that. But I think that we could become innovative in the ways in which we address those things.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
Thank you all for your testimony. I have two issues I'd like to raise with you. So one, Ms. Clark, you had mentioned just kind of focusing on school-based mental health supports for parents. And like, how do you feel like there's been adequate communication, like from Eastern or other schools that your children have attended, and kind of what have you found useful?
So definitely, I believe that it should be a family approach. So everyone needs to be well, not just the children. If the parents aren't well, then the children aren't well. I don't think that Easton has done a good job with respect to that. Like you've heard other parents say, we get robocalls and emails every Sunday or multiple times a week, but not one time has it communicated anything about mental health supports. The only reason I know that we had one is because PAVE did some extensive work last year when we were before the council to try to advocate for getting clinicians in every school, which schools did not, and mine did not at the time. And then we acquired one over the year, but that information was never made available to us.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then my other question is just, I think part of the challenge in providing more mental health support is also combating the stigma. And so I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are on that and what you've found to be effective or how we can approach that as a city.
I'm sorry. I work as a youth counselor for over 20 years of my adult life, and I understand mental health. I feel that mental health is not just sitting in a room and talking to someone about your problems. Mental health should have a whole, like they say, family, activities, a sport, going out, doing things. You know, when somebody's feeling sad, they don't want to do anything. So when you start doing activities and you bring them out into the sun, we have amazing parks here in the city. We need to, and mental health, it should be involved in not only us just sitting in a room and talking about your problems, it should be involved of doing things as well.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I just wanted to, when we're talking about mental health, I live right across the street from John Lewis Elementary, a brand new school. It's fabulous. And 3 weeks ago, there were 2 shootings on Georgia Avenue. And on the first shooting, one of the students at John Lewis was wounded. The second shooting, another student at John Lewis was wounded. And I was in the school right after the second shooting, and no one in the building knew how to deal with it because of the trauma. Because, you know, somebody gets wounded, thank God they didn't get killed. And it's not localized. It's everyone in the building is affected by it. And when we're talking about the emergency that we should be in this city as far as mental health, it should be more important than some specific educational program, because our kids are suffering from trauma that we as adults didn't suffer from back in the day. And that's why this is so important. PAVE needs to get more fathers involved with my friend Ricardo. But we need to advocate for the executive to understand the emergency that we're in. Do you have anything to say about that? I only have 15 seconds. I'm sorry.
No, that's no problem, and I'll try to close. But for your point, as a parent board member, Digital Pioneers, we actually are dealing with that. We lost 3 members of our school community within a 65-day period We primarily were having funerals every month, so from the start of October up until this month. We have had 2 children or juveniles from gun violence, and then also a teacher as well. And so as a close-knit community, we are absolutely struggling right now, and it's one of my passions, not just as a board parent member, but not just PAVE, but just as a parent for all of our families, all of our kids, to figure out and work together what this looks like to begin to find the correct provisions around safety protocols for our families and our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Thompson.
So first, let me apologize to this panel because I do not think Representative Goulet was mistaken when he said the clock is moving a little bit faster. It's because it is. It says 2 minutes, and I think I initially said 3 minutes. So I do want to yield my 2 minutes to you all in case there were any questions you did not get to answer that you want to finish.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Okay, and I'm going to speed through. Where did I stop? Okay. I stopped where I was about to start talking about my son. My youngest son, Terrence Jr., is a joyful, inquisitive trickster. He loves to laugh, play, and prank. He was also diagnosed as a black boy with high-functioning autism spectrum disorder. Terrence Jr., or TJ as we call him at home, is brilliant. At only 6.5 years old, he started first grade in the fall of, starting in the first grade fall of 2022. He was already on mid-year first grade level for all math and at or above level for all reading as well. He enjoys playing t-ball and video games, especially Plants vs. Zombies. He also loves to watch TV shows such as Pokemon Blaze, Paw Patrol, and a host of other YouTube, Netflix, and Disney Junior shows. My son began schooling at Plummer Elementary in May 2019 at the ripe age of 3. You must be 3 years of age to enroll in DCPS, and his birthday is at the very end of April. He started school the very first Monday after his 3rd birthday, Monday, April 29, 2019. When I was initially told that Plummer would be, was the school in the city with space for TJ that could provide the services that he needed, I was shocked, scared, and relieved all at once. I was relieved because he wasn't placed at our neighborhood school, Patterson Elementary. I was afraid because Plummer's reputation appeared to be only slightly better than Patterson's. And I was shocked because I didn't know what to expect. However, our experience with Plummer has been nothing less than a beautiful experience. It took TJ a short while to start fully adjusting due to starting at the end of the school year, then taking a summer break before jumping back in. Despite this challenge, the teachers supported Terrence, and we started to see growth. His teachers and I communicated regularly about his developments and at home and school. By building this village for TJ, he became one of the most intelligent kids in his class, even to this day. Plummer has not only supported TJ's academics, but they have supported my family as well as my position and action with PAVE. Plummer has an excellent speech therapist named Keisha Lee, and she is fantastic with Terrence, and she shows patience and encouragement with him. The special education services at Plummer are led by Phaedra Smith, who communicates highly with Plummer families. She has a team of outstanding teachers, such as Mrs. Tiffany Lancaster and Ms. Lauren Kennedy. Plummer also partners with Turning the Page to provide ELA/reading and mental health resources to Plummer students and their families. I have taken advantage of their free book giveaways and virtual seminars on mental health for caregivers. Plummer has taught me that just because, I'm almost done. Plummer has taught me that just because a school is in a troubled neighborhood doesn't mean that greatness isn't happening within the school walls. Over the years, Plummer Elementary has consistently scored the highest in Wards 7 and 8 of the district on the national assessment called Classroom Scoring System. Due to the COVID pandemic, no assessments were conducted during the 2019-2020 school year. However, in August 2022, Plummer scored #1 in all of DCPS. In addition, Plummer's PARCC scores have increased by 15% this year. This is in closing. Being a PAVE parent leader has encouraged me to be more involved in my children's educational and social growth. I confidently suggest or request anything to ensure a successful school experience. Therefore, I am advocating on behalf of all DCPS, including Plummer Elementary, that should receive increased funding for mental health support. Plummer is a beautiful rose in a concrete jungle that needs additional love and care to continue to blossom and grow.
Thank you. Thank your panel so much. All right. At this time, we will welcome our last panel of the evening. Terry Young, Beth Perry, Jessica Ramirez, Eric Martel, and this is an odd number, but Sandra Atkins. Is Sandra Atkins here? Okay. Well, we'll start on the end with Mr. Young.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Young. I'm a resident of Ward 5. I was hired as a behavior tech at Theodore Roosevelt High School and the coach of the baseball team. I was awarded Coach of the Year for 2022 for my outstanding ability as a first-year coach. My team represented Roosevelt High School in the playoff. I'm here tonight to testify about safety issues at Theodore Roosevelt High School that resulted in me being injured and later terminated from my position as a behavior tech without fair cause. My focus and sole purpose is not the job, but to restore my name and continue coaching and mentoring the youth at the school and the surrounding community. The job was offered to me regardless of the fact that I did not have the appropriate qualifications for the position. I also made it clear to the hiring party that I would accept the job if it did not interfere with my ability to coach my team. I believe that I was wrongfully fired due to a few discrimination facts. First of all, I was never informed that I would have to take a test in order to be hired. During the interview process, when I learned that I was sure to let the interviewer know that I simply had college credit, not a degree, I was still offered the job. Secondly, I was unfairly treated for my character. I am an outgoing person. I speak my mind, and when I know things are wrong, my life story has influenced who I am today. I care deeply for the well-being of every kid in the school, even when they are wrong. I stand up for what is right. I see wrong in this, and I am standing up for what is right. I scheduled a date to take a test to comply with the requirements. I never received the results, or whether I passed or failed. I refused to retake the test if I failed, mainly due to out-of-pocket costs. It was after the time that I felt that the hiring party started finding ways to attack my character on the job by implying that I was going to lose my job. Also making up false accusations about incidents that never happened. There were never any written reprimands for any of the accusations in question. I felt that they were trying to find a way to get me out of the position because they had made a mistake in the hiring process. I was hired to monitor the hallways, the intel clearing the hallways when class is in session. This position also requires the staff to break up fights and altercations during the day. I never received formal training for the position. I did what I was told to do in my position. When I was hired, I let them know that I didn't have but 30 college credits. I told them I would take the job anyway, if it didn't interfere with my baseball. I had retired from hanging drywall for 42 years on a program that Murray Berry started in 1979, where I started hanging drywall for $3.75 an hour. I retired from doing that. I didn't need the job. I just wanted to be close to the kids. Now, going through what I'm going through, I don't have no understanding of it. I have no understanding, but I see that pretty smile, so I'm glad to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Good evening. My name is Beth Perry. I'm the New Heights Coordinator for DC Public Schools. New Heights is a program that supports expectant and parenting students. We are in every high school and middle school as needed. I work in 4 schools. I'm a longtime DC resident. Both of my daughters graduated from DC Public Schools and are currently social workers here in the city, and I live in Ward 1. I'm here to convince you that Roosevelt Stay, one of my schools, needs an on-site child care center. Roosevelt Stay moved and is now located at the old Garnet Patterson School on 10th and B Streets. Moving to the new site, we lost access to on-site child care and a health clinic. Students at Roosevelt Stay were not able to graduate from their previous schools for whatever reason. It did not work. They're giving us one more opportunity, and we need all the resources available to make it work. DCPS wants every student to graduate and have a post-graduation plan. Access to on-site child care is necessary for our students to meet this goal. An on-site child care is efficient with school and child care drop-off in the same building. If the child is sick, instead of having to obtain permission to leave and travel across town to their child, parents are right there. We were sympathetic when DC Public Schools teachers taught virtual and had to deal with their own children at home. There was no understanding for our students who faced the same challenges. Frustrated student parents did not know what to do with their crying baby during a class or their energetic toddler who needed attention. In the end, our students prioritized their children, not themselves. Students gave up studying and attending class. It was just too hard. Financial demands from the family could not be ignored. As job opportunities appeared, we lost our students. Students' mental health was impacted, and there was little support to address this. We need to do anything and everything possible to bring these students back and to keep ones we have. That's why on-site child care is so important. One more point. Roosevelt Stay's Child Care Development Associate Certificate Program, the CDA, could be used, the Child Care Center, for students to earn their intern hours. We could contact the UD Schools of Social Work and Early Childhood. They could be invited to develop a program that would allow our students to experience those career paths by also interning through the Child Care Center. Students from the neighborhoods who know what's happening in the city, and bilingual students, Roosevelt Stay is the only adult education with an ELL component, would gain experience in these most important career paths. These students would make a difference. We are proposing a plan that will increase graduation rates and create a career path model in the areas of social work and education that includes bilingual workers, all of which our city desperately needs. Our students moved to a school with less services than what they had. This is really a common sense proposal that requires financial investment, which I believe our students deserve. We need an on-site childcare immediately. Remember, our students are future DCPS parents, and they deserve the investment. This cannot be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Martell. I'm a retired DCPS high school history teacher. The draft social studies standards should be rejected. The 2006 standards should be revised. Because standards for DC, US, and world history guide curricula and teacher lesson plans, they must be clearly and logically sequenced on content, not on skills and activities, which are still can be brought in by the teacher according to the unit he is or she is doing. That enables students to learn and understand how significant events in the past led to the present. Teaching students the chronological unfolding of events allows them to learn and visualize important sequences of cause and effect. The sequences of events become incomprehensible when grouped by their common theme. That's why we label events from 1861 to 65 the Civil War. Grouping events by common theme makes cognitive sense because that's how the mind classifies and stores information. But in the draft grade level driving concepts, no standard has a chronological or thematic connection to the next one. Given the high rates of teacher turnover, some history teachers with limited history background, and pressures of social promotion, the absence of user-friendly standards complicates teaching and learning. A few problems, and also I can mention. Inquiry is not a core history instructional method. It is a valid but time-consuming learning activity. You should remove identity. Children go to school to learn about the world. The duty of teachers is to teach and nurture their students, not proactively affirm their impressions of a student's racial, ethnic, or gender identity. White supremacy. Instead of labeling a unit white supremacy, teachers should use primary and secondary sources on specific sequences of topics to let students decide how best to characterize the events or patterns. The double standard for world history. We want students to be open-minded to all people from all cultures and parts of the world, but they must also apply the same critical analysis to the histories of other cultures and parts of the world as they do to the U.S. Now, the multiple and continuing threats to our democracy and way of life by the Supreme Court deserve more than isolated mention in history and government standards. A short and disturbing description of the threat to our way of life was written by, of all people, President Reagan's Solicitor General, which was, I quoted in my Washington Post letter on December 3rd. He wrote, "The Roberts Court's reactionary plan is a program to repeal the 20th century, including reforms all the way back to Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. Students need to study how dark money put an anti-democratic supermajority on the court with the goal of repeating the dismantling of Reconstruction.
Mr. Martell.
And now intent on repealing
Mr.
the
Martell.
progress of the last 120 years. Certainly,
Mr.
Reconstruction
Martell.
needs to be emphasized."
Thank you. At this time, we will turn to our board for questions. Thank you all for your testimony. We'll start with our student representatives. Representative Washington.
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Representative Reed.
Oh, Roosevelt State previously had a child care center. Okay.
Yeah, the child care center is on the Roosevelt side, but we had access to it. I had my students were using it.
Do you recall who was running that program?
UPO.
Okay. Was it through an Aussie
Yeah.
partnership? Okay. When did that end?
It's still going on. When
Oh.
we moved to another site.
Stay.
So,
Oh,
yeah, so
gotcha.
They still have, they actually have more spaces now that we moved.
Gotcha. Okay. So Roosevelt still has the UPO partnership. Roosevelt stays
Yeah.
in a new location and needs a okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Ms. Perry, is there unused space at the new location that is ready for?
I am no building expert, but yes, there is downstairs. We've looked, and there's a ramp into the building. There are 2 rooms. What we're looking at is from 0 to 3, because then they'd go on to pre-K, so we're not looking for like pre-K 3 and 4 there. There are 2 rooms and there's a bathroom. Now, does it need a lot of work? I'm sure it does, but yes, there is the space.
So you have space, you would need staff, or?
We would need, I'm honestly, it's more like the putting, I went through the construction of the daycare at Coolidge, which took years with all the, regulations and codes and everything. So I'm more concerned about getting the site ready. I think getting an agency to come and run it will be a piece of cake.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Representative Best.
I don't have any questions, but I do believe that creating spaces or creating opportunities for how do I want to say this? Culturally and identity affirming spaces in our schools is paramount. And I have a lot more to say, but I think I'm going to actually write out a response for you. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Chang.
Hi, Mr. Martell. Curious, based on your extensive experience with the standards, what would you change? What would you change about the standards that you used to work with?
I would like to see the standards more clearly organized for the history standards in particular, organized by the sequence of content. Within each of the time frames, then a teacher should see these are the main points that we're going to cover, the events and so on. And then they can take the events and they can work with they can design different activities. You know, they can have a combination of lectures and note-taking, or groups of students looking at various primary sources, taking different points of view on a question that may still be in dispute about a particular event. But that makes it easier if you have it sequenced on content. If you look at the standards, the draft standards, and to some extent also the 2006 standards, is that it's not very clear if there's even a chronological sequence. Sometimes, I mean, in some of the standards, you go back and forth, and some of them aren't even in the right order. One that comes to my mind is the Ku Klux Klan. It talked about the Ku Klux Klan right after the Civil War, and then it started talking about other people being attacked. Actually, what they were referring to was the rebirth of the Klan in a totally different area of the country, actually in Indiana and the North in the 1915 to 1920s. I think it should be possible. I mean, I've seen teachers have organized their their lesson plans, their sequence of activities before. And it tells you what do you need to know, the what, not necessarily how.
Thank you.
Representative Patterson.
Yes. Ms. Perry, thank you for your testimony and making sure that students that are in programs that you've stated have child care, and you came with, you know, a lot of knowledge. So I wanted to ask you specifically, what is it that you're requesting that a state board member, how can we help you to make that come into reality?
I believe we have the space, but we need someone to go in who knows an architect to go in and to design it, and then we need the funding to create it. Right now, we are looking for childcare for our students, but it's not convenient. I have right now on my caseload 15, possibly 16 young women who are not in school or in school inconsistently because we don't have on-site childcare. Plus, the other piece I really want to emphasize is I really do think that it could be a career developer for early childhood and social work, and that our city needs people, young people from the community, needs native speakers in Spanish, Amharic, or whatever, to take over for those of us who should be stepping down. And I think this would be an opportunity to develop a career path in social services within the context of other career paths that Roosevelt State has to offer. So I think both of those reasons are important to have it there.
And you mentioned UPO, or my colleague mentioned the UPO. My colleague mentioned the UPO. Have you already spoken to the individuals, those individuals as well, as far as funding again and those type of things? Because now you're talking about construction. Have you found the funding as well?
No, we're at the beginning.
Okay.
The students have been involved. We've had circulated a petition. I have a whole bunch of letters from students that they're writing and are compiling, and when I translate them and put them together, we'll make sure that you get a copy of those. The school is 100% on board. We're going to start going to city council hearings and then asking the community to support us. So this is kind of like the initiation of being out with what's going on.
I would love to help you, first and foremost. What is the capacity that you're looking for?
Ideally, it would be probably 6 to 8 newborns and 6 to 8 toddlers. So we're looking between 12 to 16 in the child care altogether.
Okay, thank you again.
Which kind of fits the other schools that I work with.
More than supportive. I look forward to trying to help you out, okay?
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Perry. I'll continue with what you're discussing there. We're back to, okay.
I'm
We're
sorry.
good. And no, I just was making sure the clock reset. So right now, the mayor's pencils aren't down on the budget, but they're getting close to being down. And I think it would still be a really opportune time, if you haven't done so already, to bring this to the, probably the Deputy Mayor for Education would be the place to go first on it, and just present it as an idea. Because like sometimes what will happen is there'll just be, you know, like a gap of money there versus what the resources are, and a great idea comes in and people are like, let's get this done. And I know they've been talking a lot about Birth to 3, so to be able to utilize school space, you know, for something to keep our kids engaged with the big push on Birth to 3, I mean, the timing might be perfect on it. And then you still have the opportunity to engage with the council and try to get, you know, it in at the council level, but it's always easier to try to get something at the mayor's level because the council's got to take it away from something else and then keep the budget balanced. So I think it's just a great opportunity to bring such an idea to the mayor. And it's the 13th Street campus is where it is right now? Or?
The old Vernon Patterson 10th and Street.
Okay, okay, great. All right, well, thank you so much. And okay, wonderful. And if you need help, you know, just send me an email. I'd be glad to help connect you. Mr. Perry, or not Mr. Perry, Mr. Young, I would encourage you, we have, you know, great staff here at SBOE, you know, to maybe reach out to us here at the board and see if there's resources we can connect you to, and just to kind of sit down and I think understand, you know, the issue you're facing personally a little bit more, and that way, you know, we can connect you if this isn't the right place to help you, connect you to who would be on that, because I'm really impressed with your dedication for our youth, and we want to make sure that, you know, you have an opportunity to re-engage with our youth here in the city. And but just would encourage you to reach out to our office here at the State Board for help. And if you want to email me first, and I'll connect you, whatever's easiest for you. So we'd love to hear more from you. And then in my last minute, Mr. Martell, it sounded like you were hitting upon some of the same issues that Ms. Fuchs and Mr. Goldstein were earlier in the day on the issue of maybe the existing standards we have, even though they're very outdated, are a better starting point than what OSSI's come up with so far because of the issue of kind of abandoning the chronology of history. What do you think the starting point should be, you know, for this analysis? Should it be what we have now? And do you think that that's a better starting point than what OSSI has put out in their draft?
The way I would frame it is that each of these areas, you know, are disciplines that go history, economics, geography, government, civics. These are, think of them, if you think of them as disciplines with a history of how they developed, they have more or less their own logical, efficient ways of presenting it. You know, I said that history, for example, the logic of history is chronology because things happen over time.
Thank you, Mr.
That should be very clear in the standards. And then you
Mr.
can
Martell?
bring in other things to enhance it or...
Mr. Martell?
I didn't give you enough time to answer. I apologize. I can connect later. Thank you.
Representative Williams?
Thank you. Mr. Young, I just want to quickly say that I echo what Representative Goulet said, and I hope there can be some support to kind of raise the safety concerns that you brought up at Roosevelt. Ms. Perry, thank you again for being here today. Really appreciate having learned about this concern at the panel discussion that we had a couple weeks ago with Representative O'Leary. And I'm kind of curious on a couple of things. So one, well, first let me say that I'm happy and willing and will lend my voice to support this issue and plan to testify at the upcoming council meeting about this need. So I'd love to collaborate with you on that. And then additionally, have you thought about how OSSI can be supportive of this need in any way? Or, you know, just kind of in planning what next steps, given that you know that it's worked in other places in your experience at Coolidge?
Yeah, I have to say no, and I'll just say if I could contact you for some ideas around that, I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, not a problem. And then do you think, you had said that, you know, New Heights is operating in multiple places throughout the district. You know, given that we have that support, like, what was the timeline that you kind of saw before, like, the programming concern that you could think would be reasonable for supporting Roosevelt State students right now?
Well, again, I have the long experience in Coolidge. I mean, I would love to say, you know, the beginning of the next school year, we can say we will have a child care center. I don't know if that's realistic, so I will continue to look for other options, including the 14 or 15 that I have that don't have child care right now. So as soon as possible. I can't overemphasize how much our students, when they decide to commit to the state schools, they want to come back to school and finish and graduate. They're really committed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's incumbent upon us to do everything possible to make that happen. So as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Are they currently able to use the child support at the Roosevelt location?
At other locations?
Yeah, or at Roosevelt?
I mean, it's too far away. I have to find some.
Okay.
And no one wants, and everyone says, well, they can find childcare at their home, near their home. That's not where they want to be. They want their child near.
Right.
They've seen the dark side, okay? And they don't want to be away from their child in case that dark side appears. They want to be right there. They're good parents. They're excellent parents.
I understand that. Thank you. And Mr. Martell, I'm not going to put you in the same position that Mr. Goulet accidentally did with the timing piece there, but I appreciated talking with you about this, previously, and I share your concerns around the chronology of history and just making sure that it's contextualized in an appropriate way so that students can have an in-depth understanding of important historical events. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary.
I'd like to say hi to Mr. Martell. We've known each other for a long, long, long time. And I read your testimony, which was right along with a lot of the things that I feel. Mr. Young, I don't know what, to be honest with you, what we can do, but I know that there are, because you can't really go to the teachers' union to get help, and so I would like to reemphasize maybe going to the student advocate, which is different, but to the ombudsman to see what avenues you can take in order to get that, because this is very telling testimony. So anything we can do, but I don't know what legally we can do. And I'd like to, because I want to get to Miss Perry, so we can talk afterwards.
Okay, because I just wanted to, basically, I just want to know what to do myself, because I was injured.
Right.
I was beat by 2 kids. I was injured. And they say it's a video, but no one wants to show me anything. And this happened on November the 22nd, and here it is February, and I haven't heard from anyone.
No, I understand. I'm glad we got it out into the ether, but we'll do whatever we can do. Ms. Perry, along with Representative Williams, we heard very telling testimony at the event at Roosevelt State a couple of months ago, and I think I might have mentioned for you to come and testify in front of the State Board of Education, and I'm glad, and I'm so glad that you came. I think that first thing is on the 3rd of March is a budget oversight hearing on education. I would encourage you to get a couple of other people along with yourself and the student who provided testimony for us to come testify in front of the City Council about this, because this is a sooner rather than later kind of an, and like you said about Roosevelt State students, the Roosevelt State students, for those of you that don't know, they came back to school to get a high school diploma. All right, it didn't work the first time, and they came back, and they all had the same goal. Like I talked to them the other day, they all had the same goal to graduate from high school and do better. So we can't allow the system to neglect Roosevelt State at 10th and U Street, at the old Garnet-Patterson. It needs to be worked on right away. It needs to be a priority for the mayor, for the DME, for OSSI, to make sure that there's a plan for these, for the child care to work. I'm sorry, I went over time.
And if I could just say, the student who talked to both of you when you were at that workshop, the meeting that we had at the school, is graduating on Friday, one of our New Heights students, so it's very, very exciting.
Thank you. President Thompson.
Well, I guess let me be the first to say congratulations. Mr. Martell, it's good to see you. It's been a very long time. Oh, I said, Mr. Martell, it's good to see you. It's been a very long time. Mr. Young, I don't know what to say, but I am sincerely sorry that happened to you, first and foremost. And Ms. Perry, I want to use my last couple minutes because I often hear people say that resources don't exist in our schools. And I actually think New Heights as a program is a very, very, very valuable resource. So if you would just take some time to talk about, for the public who is watching, because people do watch these, like what are the other services New Heights provide? Because often people just don't even know these programs exist in our high schools.
Thank you. New Heights we're in every high school, and like I say, the middle schools as needed, and we're in more and more middle schools. Our numbers went down, now they're all going up. You could overall say we do case management. We do anything that's needed to be done. We provide support in terms of prenatal care, making sure they have a medical home, make sure they have their health insurance. We do parenting classes. We do relationship classes. We try to find childcare. We do referrals for lawyers. We deal a lot with immigration issues, depending on what school we're in and what the population is. We work with the dads. I think that's really important. I have 11 dads on my caseload, and I would love to have dads come in and lead some workshops because as nice as I am, I'm not a dad, so that would be good. We do a lot of community service events because they have to do their community service hours, but it's hard because a lot of them have children, well, they all have children, they all go to school, and a lot of them have jobs. So we try to find creative ways to get the community service hours fulfilled. We advocate for them. That's a big part, and this is the last thing I'll say. We advocate all the time. We advocate with the schools, we advocate with the attendance counselors, we advocate with the social workers, we advocate with the principals, you name it. And I think the one thing that makes us stand out as an organization, whatever we are, program, is that our relationships with our students is number one with us. So we develop the relationship. That's maybe why we're so far behind in our paperwork, but the relationships are there. And so amazing. We have the privilege of working with amazing students who, like I say, will be future DCPS parents. So that's a big responsibility. And I appreciate that you all recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all of our public witness testimony for the evening. So I want to thank not just you all, but all of our public witnesses for their testimony tonight. We do deeply appreciate it. Okay. You all can leave y'all can go home, y'all can eat, y'all can rest, y'all can do what y'all want to do. Y'all can leave the table. It's okay. We are still here. Our vote, we're actually going to move on to administrative items. So our first vote of the evening is on CR 23-2, honoring the retirement and leadership of Dr. Willie Jackson. Representative Reed, would you like to make the motion?
Sure, thank you. I move that we approve the resolution CR 23-2 honoring the retirement of Dr. Willie Jackson.
Second.
Well, I was going to say so moved. Is there a second?
There you go.
All right. Okay, the motion has been properly moved and seconded by Representative Patterson. The resolution will be read into the record. Ms. Butler.
State Board of Education Ceremonial Resolution CR 23-2, honoring the retirement and leadership of Dr. Willie Jackson. Whereas Dr. Willie Jackson has worked in the District of Columbia Public School System for 31 years, devoting his entire career to education. Whereas Dr. Jackson served as president of Ballou High School, his alma mater, since 2018. Whereas Dr. Jackson is a proud member and active member of the Ballou High School Alumni Association. Whereas prior to his time at Ballou, Dr. Jackson, I'm sorry, my tongue is. Dr. Jackson served as science, health, and physical education teacher at Tacoma Education Campus, assistant principal at Walker Jones Education Campus, principal at Elliott High Middle School, and DCPS Director of Athletics. And whereas under Dr. Jackson's leadership, the Ballou High School community achieved a 14% increase in their graduation rate, $5.5 million in student scholarships, 214 students receiving career technical education, industry certifications, and a successful school redesign process that contributed to the launch of a computer engineering pathway and healing-centered practices across the school building. Now therefore be it resolved, the D.C. State Board of Education commends Dr. Willie Jackson on his leadership and significant contributions to the Ballou High School and the Ward 8 community. And be it finally resolved that the D.C. State Board of Education wishes Dr. Jackson a much-deserved retirement.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Butler. Is there any discussion on the resolution?
I'll just quickly say 30 years is no easy feat, especially with the accomplishments laid out here in the resolution. And I always appreciate Dr. Jackson for keeping the building open and accessible to community members.
Vice President O'Leary.
I just would like to commend Dr. Jackson's service to DCPS. I knew him when he was a high school student and a great basketball player, and have followed his career throughout. And he's done a fabulous job in many different venues. Congratulations, Willie.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we know that Dr. Jackson is a legend, and now we will vote on the motion of adopting the resolution. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes. Yay. Our next ceremonial resolution is CR 23-3, supporting the creation and execution of a DC queer prom. Representative Chang, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you. So moved.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. I believe that was Representative Bernstein. Yes, perfect. All right. Ms. Butler, please read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education Ceremonial Resolution CR 23-3 on supporting the creation and execution of a DC queer prom. Whereas nationwide, approximately half of youth who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and other sexual identities do not feel that school is an affirming space. 2/3 do not feel that home is an affirming space. And youth who reported attempting suicide in 2022 consistently reported not having supportive spaces, according to the Trevor Project. Whereas the District of Columbia is home to the highest population of LGBTQ plus persons per capita compared to others U.S. states, making up roughly 10% of its population, according to a study conducted by the William Institute of the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, School of Law. Whereas the 2021 District of Columbia Youth Risk Behavior Survey found that nearly 16% of DC public and public charter high school students identify as lesbian, gay, and bisexual, and about 2% of high school students identify as transgender. Whereas DC students who identify as LGBTQ+ are twice as likely to be bullied on school property, twice as likely to show signs of depression, and roughly 3 times as likely to experience suicidal ideation when compared to their heterosexual peers. Whereas queer prom, which aims to reframe a traditional rite of passage into one of empowerment, safety, and celebration for LGBTQ+ teenagers, and similar events create an inclusive, welcoming, and affirming environment for students who identify as LGBTQ+, who are more likely to experience feelings of depression and isolation than their heteronormative peers. And whereas the State Board of Education commits to promoting equity, inducing policies and practices to reduce disparities between students, and creating safe school environments for all students. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the DC State Board of Education recognizes the importance of protecting and supporting LGBTQ+ youth by uplifting inclusive and welcoming spaces and promoting events such as the Queer Prom, where LGBTQ+ youth feel safe and seen.
Thank you, Director Butler, for reading the resolution into the record. Is there any discussion? Representative Chang? Representative Burnside, no order.
Great, thanks. So, I'm inspired by the leadership of students like Representative Bernstadt, as well as Representative Washington and Ms. Bardwell in the audience tonight, for the extensive work that so many student leaders have done to support LGBTQ students in the district. And also to not only point out the need for the creation of safe spaces, but also to step up and be a part of the solution and to help build solutions. Representative Bernstadt and I have had the opportunity to speak with educators, with students, with community-based organizations, as well as other leaders of other queer proms around the city, including in Boston. And I'm honored I get a chance to be a part of her vision. Thank you.
Hey. I just want to say one thing. I don't think this needs much more, but just that as queer youth, we don't really get a lot of spaces that are dedicated to us having fun, and that's what prom is. Like, it's fun. You're supposed to have fun and dance with your friends and eat and stuff. And if anyone's interested in chaperoning and, you know, dedicating their time to us, you should totally reach out to me, because that would be, like, so cool. You guys are all amazing. Flattery gets you really far. We're figuring out dates and times, but those will be in your emails. You all look wonderful tonight, and I hope you consider dedicating your time. Also, if you have any specific, you know, student groups that you think we should reach out to, or specific students you think might be interested in helping coordinate that, please send that to me and Representative Chang. Yeah, you know, like, we hear a lot about how much it sucks to be a queer student, and there are times where it really does suck, and it's really scary. But you know what? Like, we can have fun, and we get to have spaces that are safe and not just talking about everything that feels scary or feels bad, and kind of gives us space to explore our identities and enjoy experiences that we get to see a lot of our peers having, that for a lot of students it doesn't feel possible to have, but we hope that this at least is like an entry into the idea that we can have fun spaces.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, let's see how far flattery gets Representative Bernstadt and her resolution. My guess is pretty far. The motion is on the adoption of the resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The motion carries. Members, at this time, we will move to vote on one state, probably less fun, resolution. For each state resolution, of course, I will look for a motion in a second. This again will be followed by Ms. Butler reading into the record. After Ms. Butler reads the resolution into the record, I will turn to our student representatives to share the Student Advisory Committee statements. This will be followed by member discussion. This evening state resolution under consideration is SR 23-1 on committee appointments. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been properly moved and seconded. Representative, you have just elected you. Director Butler, please read the motion, the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education Resolution SR 23-1 on committee appointments. Whereas the DC State Board of Education is committed to increasing public awareness and understanding of public education issues and policies in the District of Columbia and supporting their improvement, especially for those most vulnerable students, for our most vulnerable students. Whereas the public has benefited from the State Board's establishment of standing and ad hoc committees because their work helps efficiently move the priorities of the board forward. Whereas the State Board is currently reevaluating its existing standing committee structure and still defining the specific work of the board for the calendar year ahead. Whereas at its February 1st working session, a discussion was had to amend the State Board's current bylaws and standing committee structure by establishing an ad hoc bylaws committee that shall work through April 26, 2023. And whereas the State Board recognizes that the existence and membership of the Administrative Committee is required to immediately ensure the successful operation of the agency. Now therefore be it resolved that the following appointment of members be made. To the Administrative Committee, Frazier O'Leary, Ward 4 Representative and Chair of the Committee, Alistair Chang, Ward 2 Representative, Jacques Patterson, At-Large Representative. The Bylaws Ad Hoc Committee, Eric Goulet, Ward 3 Chair, Carlene Reed, Ward 8 Representative, and Lee Bernstad, Student Representative. Be it finally resolved that the State Board establishes a Bylaws Ad Hoc Committee to, 1, revise its current State Board bylaws with engagement from the full board, and 2, to establish standard operating procedures to formalize routine processes and procedures of the State Board.
Thank you, Director Butler. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Representative Reed.
Just a small tweak to the equity statement. I am a current special educator. All my credentials are current. I train special educators and I work in special education. Just wanted to put that out there for my equity statement. It says former. Thank you.
Okay. Students? Sorry.
This is the Student Advisory Committee statement on SR 23-1. In response to SR 23-1 on committee appointments, the Student Advisory Committee votes in unanimous support of the passing of this resolution.
All right. Other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to close discussion. And the motion is on the adoption of SR 23-1. Ms. Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Bernstad.
Aye.
Representative Washington.
Aye.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Representative Chang.
Aye.
Representative Goulet.
Aye.
Representative O'Leary.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Beth.
Aye.
Representative Thompson.
Aye.
Representative Reed.
Aye.
Representative Patterson.
Aye.
Madam President, you have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Finally, on to new business. Members, are there any announcements or comments you would like to make before we adjourn? All right. Hearing none, I think we can move to some of our members' favorite motion pretty soon. I do want to thank you all for your time and engagement tonight. And before we adjourn, remind the viewing public that the State Board will continue to hold these meetings, these meetings in person, and we will convene at our next March 1st working session, which people can watch online, and the March 15th public meeting, which of course the public can join. With no further business before the State Board, I would now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
And third. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Sounds like the ayes have it. And this public meeting of the DC State Board of Education is adjourned at 9:27 p.m. Thank you.